Hello, welcome to Critical Break Podcast, episode number 2, Devil May Cry 5, hot game, hot off the presses, hot video podcast. Yes, things. Joining with me today is young Sir Daniel Rainbows from the Twitter. How's it going,
y'all.
Danny?
Oh man, I cut you off my howdy. I'll say it again. Howdy, y'all. I'm doing pretty good.
Nice, cool.
I'm ready to talk about some video games.
We're talking about some gamer things. Excellent. So, talking about gamer things, we're going to be discussing Devil May Cry 5 from Capcom, of all things. Capcom, think about it, making video games once again.
It's back, baby.
Yeah. I mean, now if only we could get Konami out of that pit.
Capcom's been going through, like, a renaissance between, like just the success of, like, Monster Hunter World, Resident Evil, 2 remake, which was amazing, and now Devil May Cry 5.
Yeah, it's pretty friggin' wild. Like, to consider that, 2 or 3 years ago, we were ridiculing them on making all these poor decisions, like Street Fighter Cross Tekken on disc DLC, Americanizing most of their IPs, such as Lost Planet, and removing most of their charm. And that stuck around even up to, Dead Rising 4, I would say, which, I mean, most people forget wasn't that long ago.
I forgot Dead Rising 4 came out, but now I remembered, and I'm remembering all the bosses in that game.
Oh, no.
Just the very topical, not sarcastic at all, topical meme-based bosses.
Ah, yes, the memes, because, that was hot. That was hot. And how they really wanted to, turn Frank West into, not Frank West or what have you. But this isn't about that trash.
This is about some good trash.
This is about some good trash, as that one guy from Kotaku said.
That clickbait article.
Clickbait.
I give it a read. Outside of that title, it was an alright article, but
yeah, I was saying the same thing, but you could tell there was a stench of entitlement coming from it. Yeah. But speaking of outside stuff with Devil May Cry, why don't we get into I guess a little bit of history about the game's development? So, or just the series in general, because I think it's worth noting that Devil May Cry 4, not to beat around the bush, pretty much came out almost like a complete, an incomplete game. And you could tell.
Because what was it? Wasn't it, because didn't Itsuno join on, I might be confusing it with DMC Devil May Cry, but didn't he, sort of jump in at the last minute, and he was only on for, a few months to sort of wrap the game up?
DMC 4?
I think it was either, I know DMC 4's
It might have been
development time was
DMC Devil
short.
May Cry 5, you might be thinking about that.
That I might be thinking of. Yeah, it might be DMC Devil May Cry that he came on too late. But I know DMC 4 was just with the development issues, it was sort of a rushed product because a lot of concepts didn't went unused in it. Wasn't it Dante's Perfect Devil Trigger, the concept art floating around for that? That was an unused story element.
Mm-hmm. Virgil possibly making an appearance in the game because, I mean, hell, Nero had Yamato, as his arm. They were not subtle about that at all.
Not at all. And then, they added him technically a few years later at the special edition, but that was a separate mode.
It was, and
meant to explain sort of why Nero is there.
Yeah, and
Virgil was doing before 3.
They did have cutscenes for Virgil, but it was 2 cutscenes where he's just skulking around in a hood, in a cloak, cutting up the puppets, the marionettes or whatever.
Yeah. Just hanging out in the town that worships his dad, just scoping things out.
Yeah. But regardless,
having a kid.
Yeah, I guess. But I guess that is. We'll get into that later, but I will say, I will be kind of doing a reformatting of the overall style of the podcast. I'm going to be doing a spoiler cast, saving that for last. So first thing we talk about is mostly going to be spoiler-free, but we'll save all the spoilers for later. That goes for, gameplay mechanics and stuff as well. However, I can't promise, since I did finish the gameplay footage I had, and I wasn't even thinking about this, does have spoilers for certain mechanics that Nero and gang have. So, I guess, like, if you're an audio listener, that has no effect on you, but if you're a video listener, I would say, just tab
close
out.
Your eyes.
Tab out. Yeah, or close your eyes. Just
put your hands over your eyes.
Think about how cool the game might be. But either way, we're like about almost like 2 or 3 weeks out since the game launched. So I think
what was it, March 8th?
Yeah, so
like 2 weeks.
I think it's fine that the gameplay I have has like a little bit of gameplay spoilers here and there, but yeah, I won't give any context until the spoiler section. But regardless, yeah, so back to what we were saying about the history, Devil May Cry 4 was basically an incomplete game for all intents and purposes. It sold really well, but this was kind of right at the beginning of the Capcom Americanization era where, Keiji Inafune wanted all their games to emulate Western games with, like, grittier, Americanized values.
It's because game sales were declining in Japan.
Exactly.
But Capcom sales were like incredibly high in the West.
Yeah.
And so like Capcom made the decision just going like, all right, so maybe rather than trying to appeal to like our core demographic here, since we have already bolstered sales in the West, we'll try and theme more games over there for like sort of guaranteed sales, I guess was their thought process.
Yeah, right. So that kind of led them to making DMC Devil May Cry, which I don't think needs any like explanation outside of like it sure was a thing that they made.
I feel like just out like it's one of those situations where obviously it's like a divisive topic, but it's one of those situations where it's like if the name wasn't attached to it on its own, it would just be pretty much like a solid standalone game that Ninja Theory had made. But what is it? Like recently, it's been more coming to light that a lot of some of like the main sort of flop decisions in the game were actually spearheaded by Capcom, and Ninja Theory sort of had to go along with it. And so like it's not entirely Ninja Theory to blame anymore, but
I did hear that, like, recently, and I don't know if this is just, like, Itsuno trying to cover his tracks or not. There's really, I don't know what there is to say about that, but he did recently come out in an interview that I read saying...
Oh, the Famitsu interview, right?
Yeah, right. That he was saying that, like, I was, like, he was, like, incredibly depressed during the development of that game. Which, I don't know if that's completely true, but I could buy it, I'd think, because... I'd like to believe, especially after playing Devil May Cry 5, he has so much love for these characters. Like, there's no...
and it's probably something where, like, Devil May Cry 4 had already been, like, a rush product, and he couldn't really, like, I doubt he could put everything that he wanted to in the game. And so when DMC Devil May Cry possibly performed, like, sort of the same way, maybe he felt like he was sort of in a rut where it's like, oh, man, 2 games and still not entirely what I wanted to do.
Exactly. So... let's jump to 2013, 2014, I do believe they dropped the Devil May Cry 4 Special Edition, which in Capcom's vain attempt to like try to revive series by re-releasing the old thing, apparently was not like a commercial success. But Itsuno did confirm...
Not a commercial success, but it added a lot of things that people wanted, like...
It did.
Playable Virgil, Trish and Lady...
Honestly, adding Trish and Lady was like going the extra mile, if you ask me. I think people just wanted Virgil.
Oh, definitely.
Which is like, I mean, that's really cool, believe me. But I think at the same time, it does like, it actually kind of amplifies that game's problems even more, because you're just adding more mechanics to a game that doesn't have much to it, like...
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's one of those things where it's like, if you release a special edition, it's almost like, oh, so maybe this should have been the launch product, which, like, if there's like time constraints or the development period is like too small to add it in, that's pretty much what DLC is, just stuff that they couldn't have right out the gate.
And yeah, like Itsuno confirmed that in GameSpot that like DMC Devil May Cry didn't add the series, that Capcom was pretty satisfied with the final sales figures of that game and Devil May Cry 4 Special Edition combined. So that actually warranted them in, I think, 2016, to, I guess, like come out and say that we're working on a project that I can't talk about yet. You have guys like Ruben Langdon, Johnny Young Bosch, and the crew coming together, saying that they're working on something that they can't talk about it yet. Nope. Back in, I think, like E3 of last year, if I'm not mistaken, right? They dropped the first trailer at the Xbox, like the Microsoft convention of all things.
The Microsoft press conference.
I was like, huh, interesting. And you just get this short hair, crude cut, Nero flying around with a robotic arm.
Scalebound. What?
Dante, but better. What? Flying around on his arm. Like, he doesn't have his Devil Bringer anymore, and like, they go full
doing the Lady Rocket missile surf. You get this dance beat going.
Yep. And apparently, the game was originally planned to be announced in 2017. However, ideas to announce it alongside RE2 remake led to its change. By the way, I should also note that this game runs on the same engine as that game, the RE engine.
I was actually going to bring up, I wanted to mention that if you go all the way back to Devil May Cry 1, which was originally, it started as Resident Evil 4, we've come full circle now.
Right.
So Devil May Cry started off as a build of Resident Evil 4. They said that the character was sort of too exaggerated. The game was a bit too goofy within Resident Evil's roots, so it went to its own game. And now we've come full circle, and we have Devil May Cry 5 running on the Resident Evil engine.
Yeah,
which is beautiful, by the way.
That's such a good engine. I'm so glad that they like kind of foregone MT Framework. Not that that was a bad engine remotely, but like...
Yeah, but like if you have, I mean... Like, obviously Resident Evil 7 was a big success, so it makes sense that with the engine, with like sort of the mocapping they have, especially the lighting system, the lighting is amazing. It shows in this game. I'm sure we'll get to that later, but I'm glad that they made it At first, I thought it was a bit jarring that they sort of went from like Devil May Cry. It had never been like an over-the-top series, visual design-wise. Like, it was sort of rooted in reality and had a bit of gothic architecture. At first, I thought it was weird that it had like a photorealistic vibe going into it, but I think it paid off really well.
I really do, and you could tell that they had a lot of fun, like with the motion capture for the game, because one of the pre-order bonuses were those goofy cutscenes that you can kind of replace the game's
the pre-visual work storyboards.
Yeah, which are incredible. You just have a bunch of dudes playing with toy cars, flipping around, like...
Yeah, there's a lot of cutscenes where, like, when the characters get knocked around, they just have actual Devil May Cry 4 action figures taped onto, like, a stick.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so amazing.
Like,
I'm mad that I didn't pre-order the game to get those, but I might. I don't know if that comes with like the deluxe pack. I might just get the deluxe pack just to get those cutscenes. Yeah, but so here we are now today. The game's been out, and I think it's really great. Again, like we kind of opened with, like, Capcom's just been on a bend lately with really high quality titles, all on the RE engine, funny enough, except maybe Monster Hunter World.
Yeah, I don't know what Monster Hunter World runs on, but it does look good.
It does, but...
Street Fighter V Arcade Edition, making the jump to the RE engine.
Listen, despite my feelings to Street Fighter V, like, you know... I think that's also a moderate success.
That game has a really good Nero costume.
Yeah, it does. It has a very solid success for Capcom, and I include it in their upgoings. I don't include Marvel Infinite there. That's kind of a shame, but
yeah,
you know, I mean, good game, but unfortunate circumstances. Regardless. I guess, let's actually talk about this video game, though, regarding the gameplay particularly, which, I gotta say, it is really nice to actually play a Devil May Cry game. And I don't mean that as a condescending way to say that, like, Bayonetta or even, like, DMC Devil May Cry are, like, inferior titles, because...
I feel like they could all be classified sort of within the stylish character action genre, but they definitely all have their own distinct feel to it. Like, Bayonetta is a very the gameplay puts a lot of emphasis on you having a one-button dodge, because you just get swarmed with enemies. So it's less. I mean, obviously that game still has like wild combos, but it's more about using your dodge to get into witch time to set those up. DMC Devil May Cry, that has like the color-coded enemies, and it's a bit easier to get like stylish combos. But yeah,
I think everyone hated
since
the color-coded enemies, because that's the thing. It kind of goes against like what the whole, I guess, like in what this game.
Some cool weapons. I like the glaive, but
oh yeah,
but this game is like, I'd say, sort of a return to form.
For sure.
The stylish character action, because just like it's so open-ended, because you can get through the game. You can get through the game just button mashing. Like they have auto assist, where I think it's if you play on like PS4, I think it's if you hold down the attack button, a character, they'll just sort of go through a standard like string. But you can play through it casually. You can do some combos, get a triple S, or you can just be one of the gods like Saurian, Dongri, where you just
Kyo Redgrave.
The combo mad videos.
Yeah. But yeah, it is a return to form in every way regarding, there's like pause in between combos to do new combos. That's something Devil May Cry kind of is a staple. And I always preferred that over like phoned in, like, I guess like XY strings, you know what I mean? Like kind of what Bayonetta does or Ninja Gaiden. Not that I hate that, but there's just something really gratifying about
where it's like you have delays and like even sometimes motions, like you have shuffle, where it's just like you have to be locked onto the enemy and then do down, back, forward, and then your attack, or you could do that motion without, where you tap lock on. So
right, it adds an extra bit of like I guess like input from the player required, as in like execution. Right. I was blanket on the word. It requires execution.
It's execution. You may not necessarily need it, but it's there just so you can vary up your gameplay.
Exactly. And I gotta say, like, speaking of gameplay variety, man, the characters in this game are all very unique, mostly cool, and we'll get to each and every one of them. But I think the first we should start with is the obvious one, the new poster child for the series, I'd argue, Nero, who got a huge facelift in this game. I think he's
Nero, Devil May Cry.
If you've ever felt like playing Devil May Cry 4 that you wish Nero was like a more complete character, maybe at least like close enough to Dante where you felt like it was satisfying, I definitely think this game delivers on that, like in spades. Because the Devil Bringer system, which is a brand new mechanic to him, in Devil May Cry 4, he used to be able to just grapple enemies with his big demon arm, right?
So like it was just, when you, like, if you usually use it as a combo ender or against specific enemies, like I think it was the Frost, where you would pretty much grab them and spin by their tail. But pretty much it was just like a grab that does, depending on the enemy, a huge chunk of damage.
Right.
But you also had attached to it the I forget the name of the mechanic, Snatch, where it's just, oh man, that enemy is really far away. I wish I could get to them. Oh, wait a minute. And then you can essentially bionic arm them and grapple hook over to them.
Exactly, yes. That was basically it. The circle button, or like I guess the B button, was always situated to the grab button, I like to call it, because you're either grabbing enemies from a distance or hitting them up close with a command grab, that I always really liked because they were unique to every enemy and every boss, and you had one for normal Nero and one for when you had Devil Trigger activated.
Yeah, where Yamato would come out and help you pummel the enemy. Yeah,
it was awesome. And I gotta say, like the what they replaced it with in this game, since, like I said, the start, not even like a spoiler, start of the story, Nero gets his arm cut off by a mysterious cloaked figure who just took his arm, turned it into Yamato, and cleaved his way to worst ever. The daughter of Agnes from Devil May Cry 4, and the daughter, same daughter also of the legendary gunsmith who made Dante's guns. Apparently those two were related, which is crazy to me. I didn't know that till recently.
Agnes is her father, and her mother was the daughter of Nell Goldstein.
Yes.
Made canon, given flesh and blood.
So yeah, you have Nico, who makes you these bionic arms called Devil Bringers, and unlike just being Devil Breakers, unlike just being able to grab enemies, like you actually will no matter what Devil Breaker you have on, you will always have the ability to wire snatch enemies, which is, again, functionally the same thing as grabbing enemies and bringing them to you or going towards enemies. Same here. But you have a bunch of different Devil Breakers, such as Overture, which is sort of like a giant discharge of electrical energy in front of you, like a shockwave. You have Gerbera, which is like causes an aerial boost, giving you more mobility.
Yeah, like it's a really good, just a really good all-purpose. It's a mobility tool. Like you can get multiple jumps out of it. If you do it standing, at least with the non-DLC Gerbera, it's just a force field that you can actually parry enemy attacks with. So, like Overture and Gerbera are just, I think it's a good thing that they are the first arms that they equip you with in the game, because they're by far, in my opinion, like the most versatile and easiest to get a hang of.
Yeah, and not long after that, you get stuff like Punchline and etc. I won't name them all just for the sake of surprise.
Yeah,
but
because the list goes on, and there are definitely some ones that are like a joy to see. But I am a huge fan of the Devil Breaker system that they gave to Nero. It's like you said before, it's sort of a more complete Nero, because essentially for each different arm you have, it's like a small tweak to his moveset. And so you can juggle an enemy, hit them with Overture, purposefully break away your arm, swap to another one, and then start using that arm's moveset, and it just makes him the character doesn't get as monotonous. Like using the Buster in Devil May Cry 4 was always cool, but after a while it sort of got samey, at least for me. But now in this, it's just there's so much variation to what you can do with him.
Exactly, and it's not
really cool.
And it's not limited to just one function either, because each Devil Breaker has a normal move it can do, maybe even more than one normal move it can do, depending on if you're in the air or directional, whatever. But you can also charge your Devil Breaker and unleash a big special move type of deal, which
your break age.
Your break age, yes.
Such a better name for a super.
It's so cool. And it does an insanely powerful attack for the cost of your arm. And that is one thing you have to keep in mind playing Nero. One of the stipulations for the Devil Breaker system, you can't choose, as in whatever arm you have equipped, you have to stick with it unless you want to get rid of it, and then cycle to the next one.
And so you can, if you do your super, that it breaks the arm you're using,
and then goes to the next one.
You can manually break it away, which is just called the mechanic is breakaway, and it's an AoE attack that hits all the enemies. It sort of pushes them away. You can do it while you're getting attacked, so it's like a burst. Or if you get hit while you're charging or using the arm, that also destroys it.
Right.
So it's sort of there's just for each arm, there's this different risk reward factor. So it's do I want to keep using this arm? Do I want to, if I'm getting swarmed by enemies, do I want to spend the arm to get away? Do I want to use my super to try and take out one specific enemy that's giving trouble? So it adds a whole lot of, at least Devin strategy, I feel.
Yeah, it's something to always think about. And, I mean, really crazy combo videos take advantage of, the order of which they set up their loadouts of Devil Breakers to create these crazy combos. Not that would be something completely viable for just doing the base game on your first run, but once you mastered the game, you can totally use it to increase your style so much further. And
yeah, because no enemies in the game really have enough HP for to survive a lot of stylish combos.
That is something I should bring up.
It's just the fact that you can still do that, and there's just so many layers of death in the combat in the game, and we're still just on alone one single mechanic for one character.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's very, very cool. But to move on, I guess, another thing Nero has at his disposal, of course, is his Red Queen. Just like in Devil May Cry 4, you can rev the sword up and do enhanced, like, special moves and combos and stuff. And that hasn't really changed. I would say they made it easier to do, I noticed. Like, much easier to rev between strikes.
Yeah, they made it's the exceed mechanic, and it's pretty much it functions as like a timed hit. So you can either rev it manually, where you have to hold the button and then like almost rev it like you're revving, a car or motorcycle. But you can do it while he's running now, which is really good. But if you rev and on like a few specific frames after an attack, like as it hits or during the recovery, you'll instantly rev it. And then so the next attack, if you do like just a standard swing, the attack does a bit more damage and it's faster. But if you do any of his like sort of command or special moves while he has rev, the attack gets like drastically, in some cases, drastically buffed or changed.
Yeah, exactly. So Nero, like, effectively, like in I guess the easiest way I could say it is he can buff his own moves if you time the rev between strikes, and that's been a staple of his kit since the fourth game, and I think they just made it a lot more comfortable to do in this game. But I think another drastic difference from 4, because I think Red Queen of all things probably stayed the same for the most part. I would say the most different thing is how Blue Rose works as gun. That was something I really had to get adjusted to, but I kind of like it better in this game. I
feel Blue Rose is really interesting this time around.
They actually made the gun feel like a Magnum as opposed to like, oh, it's kind of like Ebony and Ivory, but it like shoots a little slower.
But he has one.
In this game now, like, yeah, it's like, it feels like you're just bang, 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 like like slower but more powerful strikes that you can charge up.
Blue Rose definitely has like a lot of like weight and good feedback to it, especially with what's new with him now is he can charge the Blue Rose. Well, I mean, he's always had that in the form of color up, but now there's a new meter for your charged gunshots. And they'll like, I think you can like level it up where pretty much the gunshot, a charged one does multiple hits. It will like keep an enemy in place. It will hold it down, and it feels so satisfying.
I never get tired of using it. The sound it makes, the feedback you get, it's so much fun. And I know like big DMC combo heads are saying like, oh well, the old way it worked was better. And I'm not a big combo guy. Like I'm all right at this game, but it's like I feel like a lot of problems, just to touch on that really quick, like a lot of problems like big combo guys have, I understand, but it's also a thing that I feel like most players won't be affected by because they're kind of in an upper echelon where like they notice little things like canceling being different and all that.
It's sort of what I've seen. It's like it's similar to Bayonetta 1 from 2, where they changed a lot of things and how combos work in Bayonetta 2, where enemies would just, after a certain amount of hits or like after a certain amount of time spent juggling them, any enemies that are like medium size or larger would just burst you and fall out. And a lot of people were sort of like, a lot of combo heads for Bayonetta, they were like, oh man, that kind of stinks.
I mean, I was pretty pissed about it too, and I gotta say, as a guy who was pissed about that in Bayo 2, I come here to Devil May Cry 5, like, I'm not even upset. Like, or at least, like, I don't notice it as much because you can still combo most enemies to death. There's just a couple few exceptions. But, like, you have that Devil May Cry, like, freedom to your combos. Mm-hmm. Nothing arbitrarily breaks you out like in Bayonetta 2. That's the one thing that really bugged me. And I think as a casual really was noticeable for me. But yeah, like I don't know, like I just wanted to touch upon that briefly. It doesn't really bother me a whole lot. I don't really notice it.
This game doesn't have guard flying.
Ah! But yeah, you know, I feel for those guys. I don't want to undermine their grievances. Just, you know, I guess from my personal experience, it hasn't affected my enjoyment of the game. But yeah,
I mean, hey, it launched on PC, and we're already seeing turbo mode mods. And
We
what is
are.
it like the DMC4 like combo community? That was a few years after Special Edition when like people started to mod it. And if we're already seeing mods for 5 since it launched on PC, I mean, they're pretty much going to have their own version of the game soon.
yeah, basically. So, but yeah, I think that mostly covers Nero for now. He does have like one more mechanic, but I can't get into that until we get to the spoiler section of the audio podcast. I mean, obviously, like if you're watching it visually, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But we will cover that as it gets brought up in the the spoiler segment. But regardless, yeah, let's get on to V, the second playable character in the game that you get introduced to, and the newest character in the game by far.
The character I was the most worried about being bad with.
The character that I was worried about being bad with, but it's actually, to me, the opposite. I had probably the least problems playing him. I feel like the game was designed very forgivingly around his playstyle, because essentially, unlike Dante and Nero, he is a puppet character. He fights using familiars, specifically familiars that are kind of modeled after the Malay Island demons from Devil May Cry 1.
Griffin, Shadow, and Nightmare.
Yes.
And they have all of their moves.
They do.
Everybody's here.
Everybody's here. So, basically, Griffin kind of functions like his gun. So he's like the main source of like ranged firepower.
Yeah, because he has like his standard shots, and then he has his charge attack, where he just sends a few lightning bolts forward. He has like obviously like you buy abilities in this game, so Griffin, he gets like his own version of Stinger. He has, if I think it's you do, like he has an orb that I found usually, I don't know if this happened to you, whenever I use his orb attack, he usually teleports back to V and does it around him.
He
so
does.
So I think that move is intended as sort of like a get off me, or just like sort of a defensive mechanic, which really works well with
It does.
V.
I actually like that move a lot.
And then you have Shadow, who's your primary just up close damage dealer.
Big Blade Panther.
Big Blade Panther. One thing that I like, they even show it in his little tutorial. Since Shadow is primarily ground based, he will auto adjust his attacks for aerial enemies, which is very good. Yeah. And then Nightmare is just
he's your devil trigger.
Yep, he's your devil trigger.
He's
Press
your
L1.
win button.
He is your crowd control. He is your press L1, and suddenly you are double S rank.
Yeah, basically. Like, you will get S ranks with this character without even trying. I've done it many times. I've done it in the footage I got for him without trying.
I definitely think, because of the way that V works, I feel like there's definitely more leniency to his style meter gain as opposed to the other two characters.
Yeah. But I guess, like, to give, and I guess in terms of V himself, since like there are some things he can do by himself. Mobility wise, he's pretty slow. He mostly relies on his demons to get him around. Like, Shadow gives him really good side dashes, and Griffin gives him really good forward and back dash, if I'm not mistaken. Oh no, he just warps in his forward dash. Kind of like Noctis from Final Fantasy 15, the game everyone loves.
The one where he grabs onto Griffin and Griffin pulls him backward.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's really cool that, like, when they're dead, his mobility gets shot. Because, you know, he fights with and uses a cane. He is a frail scoliosis man.
Yeah, like, the way he works is his familiars, they can do damage, but outside of Nightmare, they cannot land killing blows.
He has to
do it. He has to come in, and he has to hit them with his cane. And like, I don't know, man.
Read
V is,
off
like,
Blake poetry.
I keep coming back to it. Like V was the character I was most hesitant about because he's a completely new character and like play style to the series, and I'm like a bit of like maybe about at the halfway point in my second playthrough, and I think like at the moment V is probably like my favorite character in the game. He's just
Really?
It's such this cool balance between just situational awareness and positioning, because his dodges immediately call his demons back to them. So if you have like if Griffin is hanging out near you, but Shadow is getting swarmed by enemies and they're about to get clocked, you can just sidestep and Shadow is immediately back by your side. And I think it's just a combination of like managing the two of them, keeping an eye on their life bars, just to make sure that because if they get knocked out, you temporarily just lose access to an entire set of attacks and potentially a dodge. So it's keeping an eye on them, keeping an eye on V to make sure he doesn't get hurt, because he takes a few hefty chunks of damage because he's a frail little guy. And also just, what another thing he can do is if you hold down, I think it's R2 or the bumper, he will pull out his big book of poetry and start quoting William Blake
right.
poems that you're going to hear a lot in the game.
Yeah, he loves William Blake. I don't know why I just said Robert Blake. I'm going nuts. Yeah, I'm kind of, I won't say I'm like completely opposite of you, but I definitely didn't really, I don't like V that much. I kind of dread his segments because
he definitely takes some getting used to.
Yeah,
I remember the first mission where you fight the boss Needhog. I got absolutely devastated because I hadn't fully grasped him yet, and I was just mashing. And one thing that you have to get used to with V is if you pretty much always need to be holding that lock on button. Because if you aren't and you're just button mashing, your demons will never have time to get over to the enemy. You actually have to not have them do anything, hold the lock-on button, and they will position themselves.
Yeah, I think my whole thing with him is that, like, I think he's just not for me, and I think that's kind of the general consensus too of like a lot of the community I've noticed. And I mean, I don't think anyone's flat out said like he's terrible, other than maybe a couple people I know. But like, I think he's my least favorite character. But I could see why people would like him. I definitely enjoy his poetry reading, 2005 edgy man, listening to My Chemical Romance.
Yeah, but like in comparison, when you have like, Nero and the Wacky Pizza Man that we're going to get to.
Oh yeah,
he's definitely like, it's odd that I find the most fun with him, but when you take a good long look at him and all the other characters, he's definitely, at least I feel like, the least open-ended. Like he's more, I feel like, more linear and structured in comparison to what he can do, sort of like combo wise,
and he has less unlockable abilities, I do believe, than either Strawberry Shake Man or Bionic Arm Commando.
Yeah, like what is it, like, for the most part you're pretty much just buying abilities for like Griffin, Shadow, and Nightmare, but V himself, he has, I think, maybe
he has Royal Fork, and I think that's it.
He has Royal Fork and Speed. I think that's it.
Yeah.
And
enemy step.
An enemy hike.
Which I mean,
if I have my eyes peeled for any sort of combo mad maker that finds a use for V's enemy hike, enemy step.
I'm sure it's like no, because even then, like, you just lock on if you want to, go for those fancy V cane kills.
It's like, hey, here's this ability, enemy step. It resets your aerial action. It resets your aerial actions. Cool.
Like,
now I can reset all of V's aerial actions.
Yeah, like, I don't understand. Like, why would they give that to him? Whatever.
I'm sure I'm gonna find some, because I haven't found all the secret missions yet. I'm sure I'm gonna find a secret mission that's like, stay in the air as V for 2 minutes, and it's like, oh well, here we go, time to buy enemy step.
Right. So, but basically, yeah. So, That's V, a weird puppet character boy. I'm sure is for certain people like Danny. I'm sure a good amount of people find a lot of enjoyment out of. I'll definitely say I commend Capcom for the effort of making a character this weird and having him function as well as he does. Because while he does have some problems, some weird inputs for moves, I definitely think like he's pretty fully realized. He's pretty cool. But I think
when he was revealed, I originally thought he was going to play like Lucia.
yeah, man, that would have been wild. But
just think it's like, well, we have a pre-established character. Maybe they'll come back in the form of this guy.
Speaking of pre-established characters, though, I think we got to actually talk about the Pizza Man now. The man, big meme man himself, doesn't want to go to his daughter's birthday party. Dante.
That's right. Patty is given flesh and blood too. She's now part of the canon.
Yeah, in voice only. Again, not like a huge spoiler either, because that's like technically before all the events of the game happen. That's part of the reason why he's on this quest, because he's hiding from Patty.
Yep. Hey, everybody! By the way, did you know the entirety of the Devil May Cry anime is free on PSN?
Exactly as much as it's worth. And it's terrible. Don't watch it.
No, do.
Studio Gonzo, I think they should be ashamed. Ew. Gross. That's cursed.
Who would win in a fight, the Devil May Cry anime or Bayonetta Bloody Fate?
Bayonetta Bloody Fate by a lot. Because while it was an unremarkable movie, I didn't, like, wish it death every second I was watching it. But
anyway, back to Uncle Grandpa.
Uncle Grandpa, big boomer, monster man.
Everybody prayed so hard for him. He broke out of the hospital, and he's here, back in Devil May Cry 5.
He's out of the hospital, boomering it up.
Yep. He drank 5 Monster Energy.
Oh. Go. And I know this
revving up his rideable mower.
This isn't a spoiler, more so I'm just tempering people's expectations. The DMC dance from the meme is not in that game, and I'm disappointed that they didn't even give that thing to Dante. Because he, of all people,
I was really hoping when I saw that there was a taunt that was spoiler alert. There's a taunt that you can buy for 30 million in-game red orbs, and I was really hoping one of them would be the Devil Trigger dance.
What are you going to do? Maybe they'll patch it in someday. But, so on to Dante. Basically, if you've played Dante in Devil May Cry 4, a lot of his stuff here, in terms of mechanics, isn't too different. He does have one new mechanic that's, again, a huge spoiler. Can't get into that until
get to that later.
Story,
but this is, if I'm remembering correctly, this is his, I wouldn't say... Maybe moveset is the correct word, or I'm going to say loadout. I believe this is his biggest loadout in Devil May Cry history, because he has... I think, what is it? He has... maybe not the way I'm phrasing it, I just mean loadout in terms of you can have every single weapon that he's able to get in the game, you can have equipped.
Yes.
You're not limited to a specific number. You can limit yourself, but...
Which I definitely do, because I have a hard time wrapping my head around using, like, more than 3, I'll be honest.
Definitely. I just do it because I mash R2 too many times, and I go to the wrong weapon, and then I look like a buffoon.
I definitely think Devil May Cry 3 had, like, maybe, like, 1 or 2 more unique melee weapons, but... I don't think you're wrong, though. Like, the amount of weapons you can hold, because that's the thing, like, he because of, like, pre-order stuff, he has, like, more than one motorcycle. He gets, like, more than one of another type of weapon later. He does have a couple somewhat repeats, but they do function a little differently each time. But, yeah, you can pretty much equip everything.
As far as, like, air quotes returning weapons, just in terms of functionality, not in name, I feel like even the returning concepts, they retooled in a way that's very, very interesting.
Yeah. And they definitely breathed some life into that. But, like, he's still Dante from Devil May Cry 4. He's got his Trickster, his sword, Trickster for mobility, Sword Master for more combos.
Royal Guard if you're
a parry boy.
Team, and you want to look really cool in boss fights while also risking looking like an idiot.
If you want to look like Boss from, I think, Third Strike fame, if I'm getting the player right. If you want to be a really cool guy, you play Royal Guard.
I don't know what part of gameplay video is up to yours.
I'm actually currently, what I'm looking at right now is V gameplay.
Okay, because I was going to say if we've already cycled through Cavalier Angelo.
Nah, that's after this.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll see some Dante gameplay later, viewers.
And then after that you have Gunslinger, which I am a fan of Gunslinger.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'm in the minority, but I
think it's split down the middle.
I really like Gunslinger. I like it.
I think everyone unanimously likes Swordmaster. That's a given. But I think more people I guess people who probably bought the game probably like Gunslinger more than Trickster or Royal Guard, which are kind of more advanced techniques.
Yeah, like Trickster is there for your mobility. Swordmaster is there because it expands your move list because it gives all of your weapons more moves. And Gunslinger, it can be either just combo filler because it has Gunslinger has quite a few useful skills, at least in my opinion. It adds some versatility. One thing that they implemented in this, going back to Devil May Cry 4, Itsuno originally wanted to differentiate Ebony and Ivory, where I think he wanted Ebony to have a higher fire rate and Ivory to do more damage. It might be flipped away the other round. That was a sentence I just said. But with Gunslinger, that is now realized in Devil May Cry 5, where where rather than getting the standard shot, one of them is rapid fire, and the other one, I believe it maps your guns to circle and square respectively. One has higher firepower, and that's I myself don't really use it a lot because I don't really have a lot of use for it in the combos I do, but the fact that it's there, I think, is really interesting, especially if someone is a newer player, they're not fully they don't fully understand the combat system, or they're just trying to play it safe and standing far away. There's a lot of tweaks to Gunslinger that I really like.
Yeah, and I definitely think this game does a much better job of easing you into Dante's gameplay than Devil May Cry 4 ever did. And the reason...
definitely. Devil May Cry 4 just drops you right into it.
Oh,
and then there's
so bad.
Immediately 7 enemies. But even then, I feel like hovering on Devil May Cry 4 more, I feel like Dante is just sort of one of the first hints in the game that was kind of rushed in development, because they balanced that game around Nero. They did not balance that game around Dante.
They did not, and it goes to show. Because,
I guess one could argue thematically it's appropriate.
Yeah,
but gameplay wise, oof, ouch.
Because he got enemies that Nero wouldn't face unless he was in Bloody Palace, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. And the weird thing is that they still kind of divvied out the enemy appearances kind of by the further you get in the game, and because they're treating Dante like the latter half of the game and not just his own segment, he's getting harder enemies like Volts and stuff, Blitzes and stuff, which are just
a weird situation where Volts and Blitzes, they're these really annoying enemies, but then you're refighting bosses that you fought as Nero that are just completely outclassed by Dante. Dante just destroys the bosses.
Yeah, except the Savior fight, which sucks. I'm glad this game has nothing like that, except maybe one, and even that's not battle. That. No, there is one giant battle, but it's nowhere near as bad. But yeah, I guess honestly, a lot of Dante's kit's hard to talk about without getting into spoilers too. So we'll save a lot of that for.
That could even be its own podcast. But I will say,
really
similar to how Nero, they made the timing for Exceed and even Max Act, which is you can have multiple levels of Exceed. And if you do Max Act, it's pretty much a frame perfect rev, where it gives you a full stock of just all of your Exceed levels.
Yes.
They pretty much I found Royal Guard timing a lot easier in
They
this
did.
game.
It's very lenient.
Yep, it's a lot more lenient, even for like Royal. They made that a lot more lenient too, which I appreciate because I love Royal Guard personally.
Yeah, man, Royal Guard's really cool. And I like that some of the encounters, especially like the infamous Mission 19, incentivizes you to really use like everything. But the game gives you
definitely.
so much time to, osmosis, like take in all of his mechanics. So by that
Yeah,
point, it's like a true test.
Like as far as like story structure or just like mission structure goes, I personally feel that like no character overstays their welcome. Like you're
Right.
constantly cycling through each character and you're playing it just long enough that you don't like lose any muscle memory or forget anything as the other characters. So you still constantly have them like fresh in your mind.
Yeah, what I find interesting too is that there's also something that wasn't in any of like the games. You can actually some missions you can choose which character you want to play, and that goes into like what you were saying about really good mission structure. Like V, for example, he's a brand new character, very honestly a pretty niche character. I'm sure they figured, maybe not everyone would like him and would rather play Nero. So honestly, I noticed like a lot of V's missions are like you optionally can play him, and I like having the option just in case like you played like 2 of his stages and figured, okay, I'm not a fan of him. I'd rather play Nero or Dante.
Yeah, like there's still the mandatory stages, but then the game gives you a choice where it's like, okay, so
Right.
now you can either play as V or Nero, and each character you pick, it's not just retreading through that level as a different character. They each have their own separate path and
It's true.
a completely different version of the stage, which is like that's also really good as far as because that like encourages replayability.
I think yeah.
Because like the series is all about replayability, just like getting an S rank on every level, finding all the secret missions. But even that, like there's potentially like technically there's there's a set amount of stages in the game before you finish the game and beat it. But the fact that you can pick multiple characters, there's technically like separate stages, so there's more than like the standard DMC count in a way, even if it's like a half of a stage, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think what they did, which I find interesting, was that they actually, I don't think they went to too different of a mission pace from Devil May Cry 4. I just think they did it better. Like, first half of the game, you're predominantly playing Nero. Second half of the game, you're predominantly playing Dante. Throughout, you kind of get V stages peppered in, but it's like, like same thing as 4, Nero, then Dante. Like, both halves kind of focus on each character with V always being in the mix. But it feels so much more natural here. It feels so much more deliberate, and I think that's like big. I think the only, I think this is actually a really good time though, to get into the visuals and the presentation overall of the game. And I think we mentioned it earlier, but being on the Resident Evil engine, this game is drop dead gorgeous. This
game is beautiful, and like I don't know what platform you've been playing it on.
PS4.
I have it on PC.
Oh.
But like I haven't really read anything about like any frame drops on any platform.
Well,
Just
I do remember, I think like the first review I watched of the game was a really good YouTuber, ACG, Angry Centaur Gaming. He does some pretty good like no frills reviews, like gives you the hard opinions. He was talking about like the specs of the game and saying that like on console,
I'm sure it's different from platform to platform, but like
yeah.
I originally played the demo on the console, and like I went through that thing so many times, and even then, like maybe it's just because I don't have an eye for it, but like it's drop dead gorgeous on console, drop dead gorgeous on PC, and it's just I don't know the jump to the RE engine. I feel embarrassed that I was a bit put off by it originally.
Right.
Like, I think it really paid off for the game.
I think the presentation of the game is phenomenal, and I played it on PS4, so it's good that we have like the two perspectives. I think the only time that I saw like a very noticeable amount of frame dipping is during some of the cutscenes, but I don't even really, it's a cutscene, whatever. The actual minute-to-minute gameplay is like like mostly 60 frames, maybe like sub like 50. But I am also playing it on vanilla PS4, not Pro, so I don't know how it works on the higher end versions of the consoles.
I think I still have a vanilla PS4 too.
I'm sure it runs a little better, but for the most part, like it doesn't bother me at all.
There's like
I can deal with 50 like uncapped. That's fine. But it's mostly 60.
Yeah, and like even just still sticking with like the visual design, where I said earlier in the video where it's like it's sort of going for a more photorealistic look and not so much like the still grounded in reality but kind of gothic architecture that the series was known for. I feel like some of the stages in this game, like especially there's like one stage with V where you're in like the dilapidated just ruins of the city, and I think that stage is like just beautiful. It's so cool.
I think these games, one thing I've been noticing critics saying a lot about this game is that like the visuals get pretty repetitive, and I think I half agree. Like, I think it's consistently beautiful for sure, but I think the first half of the game is incredibly varied with its environments, even with
definitely
being limited to a city. Like you get a lot out of that setting.
Yeah, because you're going to different parts of the city. But if they're talking about like, I guess this is semi-spoiler territory, when you're inside the actual Clypoth tree, that I kind of see where they're coming from, where the stages start to get a bit repetitive.
Yeah, because that's definitely where it gets that's where the criticisms come in. And even then, like I will say, like
it's a cool area.
But
after a while, everything starts to sort of blend together, and it's like, okay.
And I do think they do their best to vary it up, but I think like it also is just a very darkly color paletted game. So I think like some detail. I could also levy this complaint to Resident Evil 2 Remake, which I definitely intend to do a podcast on later. But like, yeah, like a common criticism I heard of that is like you kind of lack the personality of some of the areas compared to old Resident Evil 2 because everything's so dark. I don't think it's nearly as much of a problem with this game, though. I think this game is like, listen, like Devil May Cry 3 took place in mostly.
Not like a deal.
Yeah, like I'm not complaining. Because Devil May Cry 3 took place in mostly one location, a tower. And that tower had very little visual distinction outside of maybe, like, the lights in some of the rooms being of a different color. Maybe some slightly different macabre architecture. But, like...
Yeah, there's, like, the tower, and then you're inside a whale that Dante decided to jump for some reason. Then he gets out of the whale, and then you're back in the tower.
I think this game is mostly in line with the others. Like, I don't know where that... I guess that's my problem with that complaint, because I'm like, that's just a Devil May Cry thing. Most of the games take place, like, other than 4, mostly take place in, like, one location.
In one location. Yeah, like Devil May Cry 1 takes almost place entirely within the castle on Malay Island.
Yeah, you go out into, like, the greenery, the ruins, and then you go back to the castle, and then you go to hell, or whatever. Devil May Cry 2 is a fart. Devil May Cry 3 is, Temnet Grew, the tower. And then Devil May Cry 4, like you go to... Honestly, for as much people as talk about that game being unfinished, I do like that they tried to go for a little more diversity in the areas. But again, it's not a standard.
Yeah, because there's like the castle, town, and then there's a jungle for a bit, and then there's the science time lab.
Yeah.
And then castle.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not that much more variety, but you definitely can tell you're going on a little adventure. Then you go back through all those areas again. Hey.
Yeah, there's like you can tell that you're making progress. Whereas, and I feel like that definitely comes from like obviously Devil May Cry 1 technically being a build of Resident Evil 4, so it makes sense that you'd be in like sort of this one location and sort of backtracking a bit. And then in 2, I mean, you're in a city, and at the time I thought that was really cool, but I guess in hindsight it is kind of a big fart.
It's a big fart.
But then Devil May Cry 3, that I started the whole like you have an actual feel that you're making progress as you climb up this tower and through this whale and then out of this whale and then back through the tower.
Yeah. I think honestly the variety is like very negligible to me. And I think it's good enough
But yeah, I guess
it's like a non thing. It has like no impact on the overall game. Like I may just go another area like this, huh? But I'm still enjoying it. I'm still having a lot of fun.
right. And I think this is also a good chance to talk about the music. Apparently composed by Kota Suzuki, Casey Edwards, Cody Matthew Johnson, and Jeff Rona. Yeah,
They made a banger of a soundtrack.
they really did. I'm gonna be honest with. I'm gonna be really upfront, and this might sound a little harsh, but like, I find a handful of tracks really memorable from the series, but most Devil May Cry games I feel are kind of forgettable to me. Like, most of the music kind of just blends in the background for me, unless if it's like one of the cheesy vocal tracks. I tend to not always remember it. Like,
Yeah, same. Like, I mean,
Lock and
like,
Load is
whenever I think of
really
Devil-
good.
Yeah, I feel like Lock and Load and like Ultraviolet are iconic.
The time has come, and so have I.
Yeah, the time has come, and so have I. Cerberus's battle theme from Devil May Cry 3. That's one that stands in my head. Virtual Battle, specifically Virtual Battle number 2.
Yes, but I think this
The
game,
official title.
this game, I feel like has just an entire soundtrack of bangers. There's really very few songs I don't like or don't think are memorable.
This I feel like in comparison to all other Devil May Cry series entries, this game has the most varied soundtrack.
It
because,
does.
Like, I don't know about you, Bobby, but I am Team Devil Trigger. I love that song.
I love it too.
I was desperately searching for poor quality YouTube rips after the trailer came out, just
Me
like to
too.
keep listening to it. I was listening to it while I was hiding in fear from the original version of Subhuman. Devil Trigger was sort of my safety blanket, but like, just you have that variation in music.
I don't
have,
like the new version of Subhuman either. I think that might be the one song. Huh.
The one thing that the game does with the music that I like, that I don't see a lot of people pointing out, at least in what I've read, is it does something similar to what Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance did, in where if a song has vocals and it pertains to one character, chances are the lyrics in the song have to do with that character.
Yes.
Like the lyrics of Devil Trigger are, talking about I have all this rage inside me and this power that I don't know how to control, and that sort of plays into Nero in that, like obviously Nero's
he's got a lot to prove. He's kind of more green than Dante.
Oh, definitely. And like, we the player obviously know his origins, but he doesn't. Like he grew up as an orphan, so he doesn't really know what he is. Dante's song is just the lyrics to Subhuman, from what I can make out. I don't listen to a lot of screamo, admittedly.
No,
is that he is subhuman, as Dante is half demon. Spoilers.
This is correct.
I think one of the lyrics is "I am unkillable." Dante famously gets stabbed a lot. He usually doesn't die. And then I don't know a lot about V.
I like V's though. It took a little bit to grow on me.
Is a banger for me. I like it. It took a while to grow on me too, and then it got to the point where like if I'm doing V stage and I get like an A or an S rank and the lyrics come on, I'll find myself like mumbling like "Savior, bloodstained."
Yeah, I think if I could name a couple standouts, I'll be vague on like some non-trailer revealed bosses, but like Nidhogg is definitely a standout. Cavalier Angelo, I love that song. It's so good. Mission 14 with the last V mission. That song. Yeah. Ooh. So good.
Oh my gosh. All of let me say, the gallery mode in this game is a treat on its own. The music they have for gallery mode, oh my goodness.
Ooh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Devil Trigger Tropical Night remix. What?
It's so good.
Also, I honestly think my favorite, like one of my favorite songs in the game as far as character themes go, just Nico's theme. I love that.
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
It's like,
it's good.
It's just really like rustic, hospitable, kind of like It's like a town. It's like a town theme or like just an RPG like item shop theme, and it's so good. I just love listening to it, and I feel like it's just a really good motif for Nico because like in a lot of her scenes, a lot of like character themes get used as a lot of leitmotifs in this. Like there's a lot of moments in the game where like the first few opening notes of like Devil Trigger will play, or like in every time Nico shows up in the background sometimes, like her theme is just playing, but it's maybe like one or two instrument tracks.
Yeah, it's like subdued.
Yeah, there's like a lot of variance in the soundtrack in this game, and a lot of just good use of exactly, like using sort of subdued versions of it just in sort of accentuating who is at like which character is in focus in a particular scene.
And let me just say, to tie in with, I guess, us talking about the sound of this game, the voice acting, all the voice actors bring their A game to this game. Like, I don't think
everyone's...
I've always been like a fan. I do like Devil May Cry voice acting, but I always liked it because it was cheesy, campy, and hokey. And while they keep that here, I definitely think for the scenes that are really serious and really need that extra acting chops, that extra punch, I think like Ruben Langdon and the guys really nailed it.
Yeah, because like when was the last time we heard like serious Dante outside of like
Devil May Cry 2.
like Devil May Cry 1 and 2, but that I don't think that was Ruben Langdon. I think Devil May Cry 3 was Ruben Langdon, but even then like Dante never so much got, I won't say like dire serious as he did sort of like he understood the gravity of the situation, but he got sort of like grumpy about it.
Yeah.
But now in this, like there are parts where he's like just sort of like genuinely concerned or just brooding over something, and I think
or
it's
like,
really, like
keeping a secret, which he is for most of the game, and you can really tell.
Yeah, like all over the board, everyone, like just really good performances from everyone, even Kyrie.
Even Kyrie, which we're gonna get into.
All two of her lines.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get into that. But yeah, I guess getting into the story spoilers, guys. So. I'll set a timestamp in the description or in the comments section for where we talk about everything. So if you want to know where to skip to, if you just want to hear overall impressions of the game, just skip right there. But for now, we are going spoilers in 3, 2, 1. So, yeah.
Whoa.
The game's...
we're in Spoiler Town.
Oh, the
it's
dimension.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So we are unhinged by the mortal coil of needing to be quiet. But
we've killed God.
We have.
We are God now.
We really are. But yeah, the game starts off. Like I guess like I'll try to do it chronologically just to be the easiest way to. Because I'll say this: the game's like story structures all over the place. They really jump around from time to time, at least in the first half of the game.
Yeah, that's why at the beginning of each mission, it lets you know what day it is and what time it is.
Yeah, and for context,
and even the mission structure shows the timeline too, because it like sort of flashes back and forth between characters and timelines.
And for context, I actually think Devil May Cry 5, like, it's like direct story, the one that's like present for that game, takes place in like the span of like a day, I think. But the things...
Yeah, there's like one flashback, but if I remember correctly, it spans from like 4 a.m. to like 4 p.m. So it's like it's not even like a whole day, it's like 12 hours.
Yeah, there are a couple flashbacks that are kind of like far-reaching. For example, when Nero, in the opening scene where Nero is, just working on the Devil May Cry mobile, and big hooded figure comes in and cuts his arm off. That's a couple days before the event that transpires. But yeah,
so that takes place in like April, and then that's when he loses his arm, and then they go to fight the
April 30th. 2 days. April 30th is when he loses his arm. But actually,
he loses his arm, and then 2 days later goes to fight the final boss of the game.
No. Actually, I'm like just to double check. I'm actually.
Oh right, I forgot we're in spoiler territory.
Yes, we are. We could spoil the crap out of things. So yeah, April 30th.
He's the final boss of the game.
Yeah.
In a way.
April 30th is the time Nero loses his Devil Bringer, his arm. And then a few days later, V shows up to Dante Lady and Trish's doorstep to be like, "Hey, there's this big old demon guy in Redgrave City," which is, by the way, a huge mark out. I marked out because Dante's original name was supposed to be Tony Redgrave, and they made it canon. They made it canon. For a while. He has actually been Tony Redgrave during his early devil hunting escapades. God, that is the best.
The anime and the novels are canon.
Oh man, and yeah, I did mention it before. One of the motivating things for Dante to go on V's request is because Patty calls him and is like, "Come to my birthday."
Yeah, the little what is it? Like, she's the daughter of like a warlock or something. In the anime, and she's 18 now, and she wants Dante to come to her birthday, and so he takes the job of fighting Urizen. Haha.
They even have Morrison shows up in the game, and he's black now.
He got birdied. Yeah, he was
definitely sick.
Yeah, he was really sick in the anime. He was so pale. Done got birdied.
It is Capcom. Damn. Oh, that's so good. That makes so much sense. Oh. Damn.
Even weirder, I'm pretty sure he is. I think, if I remember correctly, he's voiced by a white guy, so it's like it's sort of man, like a lot of things in this game.
I wonder, did they just make him black because this game? I feel like this game
they definitely made him black because they wanted a funky black guy to say funny things.
They wanted a Rodan.
My god, they did want a Rodan.
Like a Rodan, like from Bayonetta, and that's
Rodan is like stoic and cool, but secretly a weeaboo. Whereas Morrison is just like,
and actually is strong.
He is just like the trope of just like funky black guy given flesh. It's just like
he's not even in a lot of the game, but I appreciate that they put him there.
Like, Morrison's character feels like a character that would have showed up in Devil May Cry 3.
He really
just that sort of time.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess you know, if not Morrison, it could have been like Enzo from the anime, not from Bayonetta. The character that I mean, I guess if the anime is canon, now the reason that Dante doesn't carry over his weapons from canon because he sells them to Enzo because he has a very big tab, but
anyway. It seems likely, but so they all kind of, or rather Dante and crew get to the city first, and then V kind of leaves them behind, I guess, to get Nero, which, I mean, Nero doesn't have his devil breaker yet. He just has a stub arm.
He hires Dante to fight a demon king that's to be resurrected, and the last demon king that Dante killed was Mundus.
Yeah, by the way, this is May 16th, so this is like half a month after Nero loses his arm.
Yeah, and then so V escorts them into the city. They go into the Kleipoth. Dante, Lady, and Trish head out on their own. And Dante's like, you know, hey V, you look kind of pale, and you're kind of scrawny and not as cool as us. It's okay to run away. And so V does retreat, and I guess because we never actually see like Nero or Nico accepting a job, but I guess it's implied that he went to go and
pick them up or something.
Nero,
yeah,
or he had like already contacted them, and Dante and gang didn't know.
I think that's what they make it out to be. Yeah, like that they kind of
because he's probably going to, you know what, he's probably going to rendezvous with Nero and
because like he already showed where Dante. Like, he already showed Dante where the tree was, and he wasn't worried that... Because Dante's an expert. He wasn't worried that Dante would ever get lost. He'd find his target. He's been around the block before. But Nero probably needed a little escorting. I'd like to believe that's what it was.
Yeah.
But, so, yeah, basically, they get into the Kleipoth. And by the way, this is like, I think... You play through this section as both Nero and Dante, but at different points in the game. But from Dante's perspective, which is technically a bit later, you run through the tree and you get to Urizen first. And then Nero shows up a little bit after. Again, no Devil Breaker.
What is it? It's Dante walks in. Lady and Trish got there before him. Urizen pretty much knocked them out. Dante fights Urizen. He gets knocked out, and as soon as Dante gets knocked to the ground, he gets pushed away after getting hit with a tentacle. Nero walks in, and that's
with one arm. What a brave boy!
And that's in the prologue where he walks into the room. Nero goes like, "Why am I here? He's got this." He walks in, and then there's Dante just getting smacked around and falling on the ground.
Yeah, and that is a really interesting. Thing with this game is it actually starts off a very unlike any other Devil May Cry game. This is the first one where it starts with a defeat for the most part. Like, everyone just gets bodied by Urizen, who doesn't even get out of his chair. He kind of just uses his big dumb crystal to body everyone.
Yeah, he just sits there.
Now, I will point out, this is not a force fail. Now, in most other video games, they would make this a force fail, but the team were wild. And made it a winnable, possible. A winnable fight.
Because he has an HP bar.
He does.
And it goes down. And what is it? If you beat Urizen in the prologue, you get a secret ending where it goes to a black screen and the text says it was the best. It was like something about like it was the best outcome everyone could have hoped for.
Yes.
And then you get a picture of everyone of just Nero, Dante, Lady, Trish, and Nico sitting at the van. And V walking towards him with his cane, and it's just like, oh, we saved the day. No one had to undergo character development.
Nobody did, and the game and the day was saved.
The day is saved.
That
we
is,
didn't have to learn anything.
It's so good, and yeah, it's very possible to do that. But honestly, likely you're gonna get floored by this big man who doesn't get up from his chair, just kind of hits you with his crystal a bunch, and. Yeah, like that. It's a really interesting way to start the game, and I think the fact that it isn't a force fail really still keeps that Devil May Cry feel that you could do it if you're good enough. And
oh, definitely.
Yeah, it's such a cool moment, and Urizen just comes off as such a really intimidating villain, despite having a weird voice. Which, I mean, there's a reason for it. We'll get to it. But yeah, so then it cuts to a fresh month later, and Nero returns to that city, now outfitted with the Devil Breaker arm that Nico made for him, and, meets up with V after bodying a jobber demon named Goliath, who kind of just vores things with his belly. There's, God, that is awful.
And it has one of my favorite Nero line reads, where after beating Goliath and meeting up with V, it says, "Thought I was going to have to pick you out of his tummy teeth." And I think tummy teeth is my favorite thing Nero or Johnny Young Bosch has ever said. I was not expecting that line, and for whatever reason, just his cadence, I lost it.
I wonder how many takes it took for him to get that right without laughing so much. Tummy teeth. What a thing to say.
Yep, but then from there, V does some exposition, gives some lore about the Klipoth, says we gotta go in there, and, Dante's probably dead, but it's up to you. A lot of V is it's up to you, Nero. You're the only one who can save the day now.
Yeah, he really makes Nero out to be the chosen one here.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, who else is capable on Earth but him right now?
Yeah, outside of Dante and, Lady and Trish, Nero is definitely the second most capable. And after some foibles and adventures,
but that's actually something to point out too, that Lady and Trish are missing, and that's you fight I think the third boss, and you rescue Lady.
Yeah, you fight Artemis, which is actually if you read the lore, pushes up glasses. It's apparently the Artemis gun from Devil May Cry 3 bonded to a human host, being Lady. And that was the demon that a lot of people, because it had an angel motif to it, a lot of people were expecting it to sort of be Lucia, but in demon form, and they were expecting her to come back. But turns out it was Lady, and she was all gooped up inside a demon.
Yep, and Lady does almost nothing for this whole game except one line later that I'll get to that was really good, but she does nothing for most of this game. Neither does Trish, and some people might be a little disappointed about that.
Ann.
She did, but there's like that, and like one thing I'll say later that actually does tie in with the themes of the game really well. She has like one line that's really good, but for the most part,
I think I know the line you're talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll probably get to that later.
but yeah, you're just, you rescue Lady, and you basically split paths from there.
Yeah. So like Nero, his main goal is he wants to see if Dante's okay, and he also wants a rematch with Urizen. Whereas V, he's sort of off doing his own thing.
He's looking for Sparta. Yeah,
he's looking for Sparta with the intention of giving it to Nero and hoping, hey, maybe this will give him a power buff so we can beat Urizen.
And this is actually kind of around the time where you play V for the first time and you fight Nidhogg, who his only defining characteristic is he's dumb.
He's very dumb. He's a big, smelly idiot.
He is. And he's like, okay, my favorite line from him is like, you dog and cat.
Yeah. Yeah, Griffin burns him, and then Nidhogg's
he gets really
ultimate
salty
diss comeback is to call Griffin and Nightmare, or Griffin and Shadow, bird and cat.
I think that is something worth noting, is that because like V is kind of not one-dimensional, but most of his lines are just like vague poetry. Like he has Griffin to kind of offshoot that and be the wacky comic relief that hangs around him.
Definitely. If he could still summon Griffin, Shadow, and Nightmare, but he did not have like Griffin as a sort of foil, I feel like and he was just like monologuing to himself, I feel like he would be a drastically different character to me. I would find him so boring. But like you have Griffin there for the snark, V to be sort of the straight man, but there's like so many points where Griffin will say something and V, like, it's not in the subtitles, but he'll smirk and he'll have like a noticeable, just small chuckle, like, huh. I don't know. I feel like that just adds a bit to his character.
Yeah,
I really like.
He has a lot of subtle facial movement.
Yeah, and it makes V a very human character, which we'll also get into later. But yeah, so it's sort of around like a few minutes apart where Nero is getting back to Urizen's throne room and about to fight him for a second time.
Oh, we completely missed Gilgamesh.
oh yeah, Gilgamesh. That was. Oh, you know what? I feel so bad because I think you were hinting at it before about there's our, I guess technically savior, the sequel to the savior fight. Your big so that's mission. Is that mission 5 or 6?
I think it's 5, because you fight Gilgamesh and then you play as V again and find the demon Malphus. By the way, the main reason why the demons are running around Redgrave is because they're looking for something called the fruit, the Clyfoth fruit, which is supposed to give the, it's harvested by a stupid amount of human blood and will give them
whichever demon eats it, it gives them enough power to essentially become the king of the underworld.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, there's really not much more for most of these demons to do other than that, but Malphus is you see,
it's just the explanation for all these demons and different factions showing up where it's like it's a battle royale.
Yeah, like you see Malphus and Cavalier Angelo, who seems to be working for her, kind of talking it up. Malphus being this giant weird bird lady, and Cavalier Angelo being a big ol' sword guy on the time-stopping horse you fight from Devil May Cry 3.
So I just want to get into a little bit. I was head over that about the Proto-Angelos. Oh my! I was
it's so cool.
Losing it.
It was
when
such
I
a
saw,
cool.
Like, oh my god, Nello Angelo is back, and then the Geryon Knight, and it's like, oh my god, it's the sequel to Nello Angelo riding on the Geryon, and it's a good fight this time.
It's a really good fight.
It's not launching missiles at you.
Yeah. So, but now we're actually at the part, I think, where Nero climbs up the Clyfoth. Since him and V, V splits off with him again after having a ridiculous downhill in an apartment building fight with a bunch of demons, which is a really cool segment.
They're on like a theater stage that's sliding downhill, fighting against, and that's the first fight against the Proto-Angelo.
Yeah.
It's yeah. So it's the Proto Angelo and 4 Scudo Angelos, which are pretty much the Blanco Angelos from Devil May Cry 4, except they don't have wings.
Mm-hmm.
And technically, with Nero and V, it is an even 5v5 match.
It
And
is.
that's a really fun fight.
It really is. But going into I guess yeah, like Nero and him split off. He's going up to Clyfoth. V's continuing his search for Sparta.
Which only V knows. He pretty much keeps it a mystery. He keeps Nero in the dark about like what he's trying to do.
Yeah. And
like
he's pretty mysterious for like the first half of the game, I'd say.
Yeah, like Nero somewhat trusts him, and he says like, what I'm gonna go do, it's gonna help us. But for the most part, Nero has no idea that V is looking for Sparta.
Right. But yeah, so not much to talk about with Nero's segment, but a good amount to talk about with V's, because he eventually does end up finding Sparta after fighting a bunch of nobodies, which is an enemy I hate so much.
Yep.
Nobodies are, unlike Kingdom Hearts, well, actually not too different from Kingdom Hearts. They're just really hard, like, enemies with, like, very hard patterns to read. It's kind of hard to tell when their hitbox is active or not. Even more so than Kingdom Hearts, I'd say, because
it's been, what? When did Devil May Cry 1 come out? Let me see.
2001, I'd say.
It's been 18 years since we've seen the Nobodies. Was there a massive fan outcry that I missed where it's like the Nobodies have to come?
Like, I understand
Worst Devil May Cry 1 enemy.
I understand those scissor ghosts, because those are really cool.
Oh yeah, the scissors are cool, but the Nobodies, like, I was still excited to see them come back because it's like they're a really distinct enemy. Like, they're cool and interesting. They're just annoying to fight in 1, and they're still annoying here too. But yeah, so V trounces a couple of Nobodies, and he finally reclaims the Sword of Sparta that he's not powerful enough to pick up, and Griffin makes fun of him for it. But then, lo, what's that? Beyond the cliff. Oh, it's our friend Dante.
He's got slightly longer hair, being in a...
And a beard, and he's covered in blood.
Yeah, and he's just at the bottom of a ravine. And so...
in a coma, and the Devil Sword Sparta, the palpable stench of the sword was covering up Dante's own pizza smell, so none of the demons could find him.
His pizza smell!
Also, I would like to point out, in the scene where you find the Nobodies, they are dancing in worship of it, and I'd really like to think that they're worshipping the Sword of Sparta, because the last time they saw that sword, it was because Dante was killing their shitty boss, who hated them so much, he called them Nobodies.
Probably. But yeah.
So he finds Dante, and he drops his cane, and he walks over, and he lifts the Demon Sword Sparta up, and he talks about, you were the one who's supposed to beat your reason.
I'm like, you traitor! What about Nero?
Yeah, and then he says, if only you never existed, then I... And he raises the sword up, and that was the moment of the trailer that I think initially a lot of people were like, what is V's deal, and what was that dialogue?
Yeah, I think what did we get again?
He goes to stab it, Dante's eyes open up, and then we get a flashback. And we finally see what happened to Ava, who is Dante and Virgil's mother.
Yep.
And we finally see what happened to her. And she told Dante to hide in a closet and change his name and become a cool guy. And then she falls and dies.
Yeah, she tried to find Nero too, and it didn't work out because she fell. Virgil, you're right.
She was trying to find her grandson too.
So it's
Virgil's son.
Virgil's son.
Nero's dad.
Oh man, but yeah,
for a very brief character introduction, like Ava doesn't play a huge role in like the overall plot of Devil May and the overall lore of Devil May Cry, but she's like a huge integral part of just like Dante and Virgil, like just their lives and their story. But yeah, we get that cutscene, and then Dante wakes up from his coma because, and V was, oh, haha, he was never going to stab him. It was just, it was a joke. He had to radiate bloodlust in order for Dante's instincts to pick up and wake him up. And then it's the reveal that he has been in a coma for an entire month, and he is very ragged, and I haven't seen anyone point it out, but I mean, he probably smells awful, Bob. Dante, he has to smell so bad for the rest of the game. He's been covered in blood outside for a month in the same clothes. He must be horrid.
I don't think he cares.
No, he doesn't care, but I'd care.
God,
if I had to be in the same van as this man, stinking it up, while he just sits in the corner and says "woohoo."
Why did I think this would happen? I predicted that you were gonna go off about this fucking shit.
No joke. It was one of the first things I thought of during the cutscene where he wakes up.
Yeah.
But then after that part, we get another flashback, and it's Dante, Trish, and Lady going into the Clypoth tree.
Yeah.
And
basically what we explained early on.
Yeah, we go back to the prologue, but from Dante's perspective.
Yeah. And fun fact about that you learn, he loses Rebellion, the staple sword that he's had for 3 of the 4 games prior.
Yeah.
So, a pretty big deal there. But, now when we launch back to the present, Dante wields the sword Sparta, which, I mean...
He hasn't wielded since 1.
Expectingly or disappointingly for players, depending on what you're expecting. It plays exactly like Rebellion. It just does more damage, allegedly. I don't even know if that's true.
It has a round trip.
It does.
Rebellion doesn't.
Oh, you're right. But yeah, so you have Sparta, and you also come packed with Balrog.
Balrog, yeah, because if you pushes up my lore glasses, if you read the prequel novel, he was contracted by I forget her name, the little old grandma from Devil May Cry 2, who reprimands him for not visiting her. And he goes on to say, well, I was in hell for 10 years. You have to forgive me. But there's a demon on the island from Devil May Cry 2 that Lucia is having trouble fighting, and it's Balrog. And in the fight with Balrog, Dante, I believe it's Cerberus. Cerberus, his 3 nunchucks from Devil May Cry 3 break. And when Balrog finds out he is fighting Dante, he gives up and turns into the Devil Arm Balrog, which is your punch item
and kick item,
and kick item, which is so cool. Like,
yeah, because basically what you do when you play with this weapon is that with the pressing of when you're locked on back or not, back and triangle swaps to punch mode or kick mode, and when you're in punch mode
or it's like blow mode and like bust mode or something.
Yeah, I think. Some samurai showdown shit. But
bust Dante and slash Dante.
But yeah, so punch mode, he gets boxing. He can bob and weave. He can do the traditional dragon uppercut.
Yeah, he has a real impact.
He's got a lot of stuff that you'd be familiar with, but then they separated his kick moveset entirely, which I think is genius. And now he fights kick-wise with capoeira, while still maintaining a couple of unique kick stuff from guys like Beowulf and Gilgamesh and etc.
Yeah, so it's sort of it has shades of like Beowulf from Devil May Cry 4, Ifrit from DMC 1. We don't have Kick 13 as a standalone move anymore, but it's in my heart. It's in our hearts.
Yeah, I think
honestly,
they gave us...
I haven't played with Balrog a lot, admittedly, because I haven't taken the time to explore it. But I'm sure Kick 13 is hidden somewhere in there, be it in like a normal or just an animation.
Well,
but he has. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, but from that point forth, you play through the game and you get up to Cavalier Angelo, which is one of my favorite bosses in the whole game, and a testament to
definitely.
how good Devil May Cry combat is. So he was the guy that you fought with V earlier, except without his horse now. So you're fighting him mano a mano, and you find out that, being that he has the power of lightning, that Trish is inside his body.
Yeah, sort of like with Artemis, and throughout the whole fight, even in the beginning, Dante like right away knows that it's Trish, and he's making all these quips where it's like, "Sorry, I can read all of your moves because I know who you really are."
Right.
And one thing I didn't mention earlier, but it's good that we're discussing Cavalier Angelo now. The first bosses of each character's respective, like the first boss they fight when they're playable, they all do a phenomenal job of really helping you like solidify how the character is supposed to play. Like,
yeah, the mechanics.
Like Goliath in this gigantic stage that really makes good use of like Nero's mobility options. Needhog sort of emphasizes with V, it's like that I found out the hard way, you cannot mindlessly mash. You have to be constantly aware of what's going on. And Cavalier Angelo is just a really solid one-on-one fight, and you can take him down using any of Dante's styles. And it's a really good way of just seeing how he's supposed to be played. I think the fight is phenomenal.
Hell yeah. And then when you beat him and rescue Lady, the funny thing about that fight, and the one thing that will never be explained but doesn't have to, whatever, is when Dante is constantly slashing the Angelo,
parts of him are coming away and attaching to the motorcycle.
Turning into a
in
new
half in the beginning of the fight.
Yeah.
Turning into a new motorcycle.
And then the motorcycle can now inexplicably turn into 2 chainsaws and be Dante's heavy weapon.
That gets alluded to. That gets alluded to in the weapon description too, in the gallery mode, where Nico says Dante has no idea how it works, but he doesn't seem to care.
The game knows how dumb it is. It's so good. Oh my god, this game.
But that's sort of going back to when we were talking about like the voice line before. Because after Dante, like in the beginning of the fight, Dante says like, "That costume's too big on you. Let me take a bit away from it." And he cuts Cavalier Angelo to pieces, saves Trish, and he immediately quips like, "I guess I took a little bit too much." And then like a really like soft and concerned tone, he just asks her in like a really hushed tone, like, "Are you all right?" And it's like, oh wow.
Yeah, and this is actually also a scene where you see Dante's just really in a rush to get to Urizen, because you see that V is kind of skulking along behind him faintly, like weakly.
Oh yeah, because like there's something he clearly wants to tell Dante, and Dante just hops on his motorcycle and says,
I gotta get to this Urizen guy before Nero does.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because that's right. Yeah, because he's just concerned about... Because the whole time he's going on about, like, this is my gig, but really it's just like...
There's
a very... He was going to get killed.
Yeah, so basically, going into it, though, like... from that point forward, he tells V to sit back and watch, watch over Lady Trish while she's recovering. And in the meantime, he kind of unloads his whole shtick to Trish, which is still unknown to the player. They do that completely off screen for the most part.
This is the gigantic V exposition where it reveals pretty much
not directly who he is, but like he is half of some, like, I don't think they do they? Like, they don't show that exposition till later.
We see the flashback. I feel like just based on what Trish says to him afterwards, he has to let her know. So pretty much we can like say it because we're in spoiler town, right?
Yeah.
All right. So pretty much, a lot of people speculated when the game was announced, and they showed
that he would be Mundus.
That he would be Mundus, and then they announced V, a new character whose name is V. And people immediately began speculating, oh, Virgil must be... Like, even the guy that tore off his arm, people speculated, like, it's Virgil, he's coming back. And so pretty much...
But I think people even thought that might be a red herring, because it's like, oh, V, that's too obvious.
That's too obvious.
But it's really a red herring within a red herring, because they do a lot to make you think it's Mundus. Like the fact that he has the Malay Island demons, the fact that, like, two halves of him are cut off, and one of them is this incredibly powerful demon lord. and we don't know yet if
I
V is
originally
human.
thought that he was like just give it like based off the fact that he had the Malay Island bosses, and in the original in that trailer where that was our first glimpse where he's about to stab Dante, and he said, "If only you never existed." Then I was immediately thinking like he is either a clone of Dante that Mundus made based off his time on Malay Island, or something
Yeah.
like that. But the
Like,
red herrings, I don't know, we took them all, put them in a barrel, and like fish in a barrel, shot all of them, and it turns out V is the human side of Virgil,
yep,
and Urizen is the demon
the
side,
unbridled
which
demon
is,
side who wants power.
yeah, and it's Dante's reason to fight.
Whoa!
And that's when, defeat after defeat, the man's body was falling apart. He was so desperate, he tore off who at the time, in Virgil's defense, he didn't know that Nero was his son. I feel like regardless, though, he would have done anyway. He tears off Nero's arm, uses the Yamato to stab himself in order to separate his human side from his demon side. The human side becomes V. And we find out later in the game that his familiars are the troubled and pained thoughts that Virgil had while he was semi-conscious as Nilo Angelo, which is
Yeah,
a really cool thing.
and it's just kind of
Like,
really funny to think about, like V, like being the pure humanity of Nero. Like, what would Nero be without his demon side? Turns out he'd be an emo, edgy guy who reads Blake,
who reads poetry, but can still crack a joke.
but can still crack a joke, and like is also inflicted with scoliosis or whatever.
Yeah. and similarly needs more strength and power.
I think they definitely
And, like,
emphasize it more, like, because Urizen is said to be the new Demon King, so it's implied that he already has incredible power, but they want power for completely different things, reasons. Urizen wants
Because
power for power's sake.
Whereas
V just doesn't want to die.
Yeah, he doesn't want to die. But it's actually prior to this flashback. It's actually, I think Trish is the one that drops the wham line where she confronts V and says, there is no demon named Urizen, because Trish is a demon, she would know. So there is no demon named Urizen. V gives his whole backstory, and it's pretty much implied, because when V originally contracts Dante, and Dante asks him the name of the demon, his lips noticeably, the way that his lips and teeth go, it doesn't look like he's saying a word that starts with a U. It looks like he's going V.
Yeah.
So at that point, it gives Dante's like, I have to go fight Urizen, two things. One, he doesn't want Nero to be in over his head and get killed. Two, he doesn't want his brother to kill his son.
Yeah. It's a very, very strange family situation, which this game's family themes definitely going strong. But
and then from there we have another Dante stage.
Yeah,
where...
you do a puzzle which isn't really a puzzle. It's actually kind of funny because you basically do what's equivalent to pressing a bunch of switches. You just go to some blood puddles and fill the thing up, and then Dante immediately replies with, "That was the most I had to use my brain in a while." I'm like, Dante, this wasn't like a difficult puzzle. What are you doing? Come on.
Then that mission, I think I had talked to you and Matt about it, where it has a really good moment that I really liked in the game.
Insanely good moment.
Insanely good. Just like harkening back to just like the visual design, the sound design in the game. The music, the stage music goes away, and this almost like sort of soft, not even like orchestral, but just like the string-oriented piece plays, and Dante starts talking about how everything is so familiar, and you come out from underground, and there's the devil. I don't know. I'm gonna say his last name is Devil May Cry. The Devil May Cry family estate.
Yeah.
And just amazed that it's still standing, and there's just this really like almost sad and melancholy string piece playing, and you can see like the family portrait. And one thing I noticed, I actually tested it I idled as Dante in that area, and he didn't really do his usual idle stance. He sort of just he like crossed his arms and stood there, but he looked down at the ground. And again, the RE engine is amazing. His face is like noticeably like sort of troubled. And so you go into the house, and Dante sort of questions, talks about how him and Virgil were always fighting. He wonders why his dad gave him the rebellion. And at that point, we realize, whereas the Yamato can separate human and demon, if you stab yourself with the rebellion, it combines human and demon. And this part of the game is so cool, Bob.
It really is. This is where you get Dante spoiler mechanic.
Oh my god, he absorbs the rebellion, and the Sparta turns into a combination of, like, the original design of the perfect Devil Trigger from Devil May Cry 4 and a few bits and pieces of the Majin Devil Trigger from 2. And it's called Sin Devil Trigger. And spoiler alert, Nero gets walloped again by Urizen. He cuts his hand.
He does. He lands a blow.
Which I don't know if this is harkening back. I feel like this has to be a callback to Devil May Cry 3.
Right.
Where Virgil, when he beats Dante the first time, and when Dante beats him, Virgil cuts Dante's right hand with the Yamato when Dante reaches out to him. And Nero, the first person to land a blow.
I'm sure it is a reference. Like,
to break Urizen's barrier.
If you think it's a reference, it's a reference.
It has. I thought that was so cool. And Nero cuts Urizen's right hand, and Urizen gets really mad, and suddenly the Daniel Salvard starts kicking in, and he starts saying some lines that, Virgil would say that, about how he's human and weak and powerless, and he gets up, and he wallops Nero, and he's just standing. And then Dante comes in the perfect Devil Trigger form, and, oh my god, you acquire the Devil Arm, the Devil Sword Dante. I mean, good. I guess there's a point, like, at this point, Dante is so much strong. He has to be so much stronger than Sparta.
Oh yeah,
he has to be. Like, he probably already was in Devil May Cry 1 when he sealed Mundus away, but like he now has a devil sword named after him.
Yeah,
he's so powerful and cool.
Yeah, they didn't make it clear, but I think it's implied that he definitely is like on the level of his dad, if not surpassed it by that point.
Yeah, because like now and like the weapon description states like Dante's will solidified into a weapon, and it's like, oh my god. And the sword, I love how this sword plays. I love it.
Yeah, it's super cool. It basically
you get, like,
you get all your sword master. Yeah, you get your sword master abilities.
You always have Aerial Rave, which was previously a Swordmaster ability.
Now that's mapped to triangle, not the Swordmaster button. And now all of your Swordmaster abilities use the, sort of like, I will say, kind of like...
Yeah, they're like delays. Like, what is it? I think it's 2 attacks and then a delay becomes the new Prop Shredder, which took me a while to get used to.
Right, but I was going to actually compare it to sort of Virgil's Summon Swords. However, like, what if Virgil's Summon Swords was used by an Unga Bunga man like Dante?
Yeah, so
like instead of precise pinpoint strikes, you get I swing sword more.
Yeah, and that's actually it has the ability Sword Formation, which I love, where if you hold down the attack button, the Devil Sword Dante unveils its true form, where the talons unhinge and it starts to glow red, and Dante gets summon swords, and they all do different things. So in Swordmaster mode, they are an after image to your attacks. In Trickster mode, they give you a triple jump and multiple air actions because he kicks himself off of them. I feel like it's the most summon sword-esque in Gunslinger because it actually they form around him, and if an enemy attacks you, it will automatically snipe them. And then Royal Guard, it just boosts your defense. It gives you a cool sort of cape of swords. And it just gives you more Royal Guard and Devil Trigger meter.
And my favorite thing to use with it too is
we haven't even gotten into like the actual Sin Devil Trigger mode.
Yeah,
which is,
but just we will. Just like one thing I wanted to bring up, one of my personal favorite things is Cavalier. It made me like Cavalier because when you do the bike, like I guess like donut, a bunch of little swords slash around him, and it's just like, oh, that's so cool. The visual on it's amazing. But
I don't think I've used sword formation with any other weapons yet. Oh my god.
Sin Devil Trigger, though, talking about that, it is essentially another layer to Dante's Devil Trigger. You activate it by way of essentially taking your Devil Trigger meter. You can either just hold the Devil Trigger button to charge it, or it builds up gradually while you're in Devil Trigger, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it builds up gradually in Devil Trigger, but the main way to get it is you can essentially pool your standard devil trigger meter into the sin bar.
Exactly, to the sin meter.
And like I've read some things and just like feeling it gameplay wise, I don't really think Sin Devil Trigger is necessarily like
it's not a game changer.
It's not like a very combo heavy tool. Like you're not going to be seeing a lot of combo mad videos.
It's kind of for people who are having trouble with the harder bosses and want to get a ton of
definitely.
Damage.
It's sort of like it's sort of like
kind of like you know what the Umbran Witch trigger in Bayonetta 2. That's what I compare it to.
Oh, okay, because I was going to say
it's basically it's basically a button that you press that makes you overpowered and makes you do like all these big sweeping moves, and you can get its own moves for it, like shooting type moves and all that.
It has a teleport, it has like a beam, it has its own moveset, but for the most part, like once you immediately get it, it's just a very good crowd control button.
It is.
But I was actually going to say it's almost like a toned down Majin Devil Trigger from Devil May Cry 2.
I think that's the idea.
It won't instant kill. It won't invalidate boss fights like the Majin Devil Trigger. And one thing it points out is that unlike the regular Devil Trigger, your health does not recover in Sin mode. But
it does not.
Is just the trade-off is that you just do. You essentially have insane damage output and like a screen clear for a few seconds.
Yep, and you do also. I particularly really like its stinger. It's just a drill. Kind of reminds me of Nero's. What was his Devil Breaker called? The drill one.
Helter Skelter.
Helter Skelter charged up does a very similar thing.
Gauge. It's like a Psycho Crusher.
Yeah.
And what is it? Sin Devil Trigger. You also get a gravity squeeze from Marvel.
Yeah,
3.
which I see in a lot of combo videos. And it looks so cool.
You have the Trickster Dash. That's just always on in it. That's your B movement. And then I think it's if you do, I believe on PS4 it is square and triangle. On Xbox, I think it's Y and X or Y and B. You can expend the entire bar, and Dante will strike a pose. A rune will appear beneath him, and suddenly a whole bunch of summon swords flash up the area, and he'll end it with a big explosion.
Right.
And originally, when I was reading about like Devil May Cry 5 prior to it coming out, and they had said Royal Release is no longer Dante's strongest attack. I was like, wait a minute, what?
Yeah,
and
no.
Now we know what his strongest move is, and it is just you can pop Sin Devil Trigger, immediately go into that move, and it is just a the radius is big, so I won't really call it a screen clear, but I have yet to see like most enemies in the game survive this attack.
Right. It's insane. Bosses definitely, but enemies, I don't know, man. But yeah, actually, like, just to, I guess, get back to the story, I mean, there really was like a lot to unpack there. But yeah, so Dante kind of like makes yours and Shu fly go away.
Yeah, he makes
down the Clyfoth tree.
Yeah, and he says he's bored of these games, and then at that point,
you can actually
that's when they converge. Yeah, I think it's V Dante.
And this was my favorite part of the game, and one of the coolest things, and something we didn't even talk about this. Granted, it really doesn't like add that much to the gameplay, but I think it's a really cool touch. You can actually, because some of the levels take place parallel to like other characters' levels. When you're playing character,
the cameo system,
kind of the multiplayer component of the game, like the first Nero level, you'll see V running around, and that's another player maybe if you're connected to the internet. That's because that's like V's like stage 4 technically. So it's kind of a weird way to like add some continuity, like, oh, look at what this character's doing in the background. And they take so much advantage of that here. Not only like, because most of the stages are like, okay, they're in the background. There was one part like with in Nero's campaign where him and V are together and you and the other player fight demons together. But this is the only other part in the game where you and the other players could probably run into each other and just, go down this big tower of enemies. Kind of like a reverse Bloody Palace a little bit.
Yeah, it's like a reverse Bloody Palace. There's like 4 waves, and if you get through each wave quick enough or sync it up, you will meet up with other players. And so as far as the cameo system goes, I can't confirm. I know some parts are like it's co-op, but there are a few instances where it's player data. And I know this because I was on V's final mission. I got, as my Nero partner, I got my own data. And so it was me playing as V, and then suddenly it says starring Oh Hey Danny as Nero, and I was like, oh, okay.
I think my favorite little thing
I was fighting alongside myself for a moment.
That's crazy. I one of my favorite things is if you don't have a player, it's like starring the DMC crew, and that is
Skull Parasite unit.
So wholesome.
Some of the names
the Beauty and the Beast unit.
Yeah, the Beauty and the Beast unit.
Oh Johnny my God, the Gun-Ho Guns. So yeah, they climb down the tower, and basically like not like a ton of story happens up until like I think the third to last mission. I think.
Yeah, it's sort of V goes on like his own little vision quest where he finds all these. He falls down. They all fall down a hole. Pretty much everyone falls down a big hole,
their own separate hole,
and
V's weak and needs to get his strength back.
Yeah, so one thing we didn't mention is after the Cavalier Angelo fight, V's skin, if you look closely, is noticeably falling off of him. There's like constantly flake, and his skin is starting to crack and erode because his human self is weakening because Urizen's getting stronger. And so V is throughout that stage. If you run too much or jump, he will like trip and pant, or he'll sort of fall on the ground and have to take a breather. And at one point he finds all these crystals, and they're giving off some magic stink, and suddenly all of his tattoo ink comes off, and he falls asleep, and you have to go on a spirit quest where you have to regain Nightmare, Griffin, and Shadow, and you have to refight Goliath, Artemis, and Cavalier Angelo with one demon each.
And let me tell you right now, despite the music being incredible, I hated this part of the game, and it might just be because of the order I chose. I went with Cavalier Angelo first, and then I went with the Angel.
Well, it's not even just the order; it's also now the way I did it. I fought Cavalier Angelo first, and I fought him with Shadow. And then I fought Artemis and chose to fight her with Griffin. And then I fought Goliath with Nightmare.
That's right, yeah.
I wanted to do the thing from the trailer where it shows Nightmare punching Goliath, and then they get into a strength contest. I did not do that because these bosses are weakened versions, and I killed Nightmare incredibly fast, or I killed Goliath incredibly fast because I had all 3 of my demons.
Yeah.
But
so basically he comes out of this vision quest, walks around a little bit, and then encounters Malphus, which he actually, he's kind of in a position where he really can't do any fighting right now. No, he's able to run around, but he can't fight very well.
He can run, but even with Gilgamesh, V is aware that there are some demons that he is not strong enough to fight.
He is but 2 days old.
He is but 2 days old, and he is unable to fight. Those demons would destroy him.
Yeah, right.
But and that's when, if you chose to do that fight first, as he kicks over a rock, and he gets very scared and hides, and Malphus comes towards him, and she gets shot in the back of the head. And then there's Nero. And then from that point, you can either... I think you can choose to go to... Oh, no. From that point, you go to Nero's chapter, and it's a few minutes earlier, and it's him going through that stage, and then coming upon Malphus approaching V, and then you have to fight Malphus.
Which, I just want to comment on the fight. That fight is really tough. That's a rough fight.
That fight was... I had a lot of trouble with it initially, and then I started to figure out one thing you can do is, so the way Malphus works is
the teleporting head thing really just, oh my god.
So if you wire snatch the limbs as they come through the portal, you'll get pulled through the portal, and it gives you a free attack because Malphus gets very scared by you. I also fought her with the Buster Arm, which that's one of Nero's Devil Breaker, and it's the Devil Bringer from Devil May Cry 4, and it gives him command grabs. And
yes.
that's the arm that I fought her with. And whenever I scared her, I would stagger her, get a big old command grab.
There you go.
Yeah, so that fight... So it wasn't like the worst for me. I did lose it initially because I didn't fully understand how it works.
Yeah.
But then I figured it, and I felt smart.
Meanwhile, though, I guess to like interject...
Wacky Uncle Pizza Man.
Wacky Uncle Pizza Man is taking a dive down further than the other boys. He's actually making quicker progress and encounters none other than something of an old friend, but not really. King Cerberus.
The dad of an old friend.
Yes, the dad of the Devil May Cry 3 boss, Cerberus. He is the king of the Cerberus. Apparently the strongest...
of the tribe.
By the way, one thing I loved during the fight, he says this comment. He's like, I even made Burial quake in his, like, oh my god. Burial, the first boss of Devil May Cry 4.
Yep. The king of the fire hell, and also in actual like demon mythology, Mundus's son.
Yeah. Big
that fight
big deal.
That fight, like, I think this game is phenomenal. There's no bad things I can really say about it. Like, at the end of the day, like, if I lose in a fight, it's probably due to me being an idiot initially. Case in point, my original Needhog run and my original Malphus run. King Cerberus is such a fun fight.
Yeah.
Like, that, at that point, sort of what we were talking about earlier, as far as, like, potential frame drops in the game, that is, like, probably one of the most visually, like, just...
insane fights
in the game.
Because
so Cerberus in Devil May Cry 3
he was exclusively an ice monster, but this Cerberus is all three elements.
This Cerberus he's a fire puppo, he's an ice puppo, and he is a lightning puppo. Yep. And they all have their own personalities, and they all have their own control. And not only does its moveset change, but the terrain of the stage changes too.
Completely.
As does the color and the music track. Like, some of the instruments change, and it is just, it's insane.
It's such a good fight.
That's also the fight where I found out if a boss has a phase where it has a big shockwave that is intended to knock you full screen, you can Royal Guard that.
Right. And that's
wallop on them while they're going through their whole monologue.
Reminds me of using the iframes to dodge through roars in Monster Hunter.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
But
I'm feeling like a cool guy.
I want to gush here because they decided to add my favorite weapon from Devil May Cry 3 and more with King Cerberus. My
you were having a time with this weapon.
Oh my! This weapon is so good because they kept everything that's good about Cerberus, the base, ice nunchuck Cerberus.
Yeah, like it's
they packed
just
in.
Insane, but then
they pack in two other weapons into this one weapon. So we were talking about how Balrog is essentially two weapons in one. This is three, and this is what we're talking about with how crazy this gets. Like, but I will say they again in a bout of genius. If you're not using Swordmaster, you only get the. You can only really get the normal Ice Cerberus, or if you charge it, you can get the Lightning Cerberus.
Which even then, like, Cerberus on its own, like, it still has Crystal and Revolver, which are still, like, two of the best moves Dante has.
Yep, it has its delay combo.
I just forgot, we did not go over when everyone meets up and Dante, wacky Uncle Pizza, does a funny Michael Jackson dance.
Oh, and gets the cowboy hat, the Faust hat.
A weapon I am still figuring out, but really want to figure out.
I think
and
it's a lot...
You had a very fun time putting cowboy hats on people.
I did, and in the video footage, I as I was playing with Dante, I was making a very conscious effort to put cowboy hats on as many things as possible, including the bosses. You can do it to every boss, and that is incredible.
You can make Cerberus, and you can make all of his heads wear a little cowboy hat.
Yeah, and it's great. I love that little detail. But yeah, I love... Oh, man, I'm so happy that they bought Cerberus back. And the other two forms are a bow staff, which is the fire element. You use that with the Swordmaster button, so circle. It has its own delay combo. It's got its own back and forward stuff. It's got its own air. Oh, man, these weapons have more moves than I expected them to have.
Yeah, and since you brought it up, that's actually a good point that Cerberus is like 3 weapons in one. A lot of Dante's weapons in this game are like essentially multiple weapons. Like even Devil Sword, like Rebellion or Sparta, since technically that's like it's the Rebellion moveset, and then some of the unique Sparta abilities. Yeah. Devil Sword Dante is a completely new weapon, but it still retains Rebellion and Sparta.
Yeah,
Balrog. Yeah, Balrog is there. There's like Ebony and Ivory, and
I think the only one that's pretty much like
it's mostly his guns.
Yeah,
but you can get. I mean, this is going to be later in the story, but I think it's technically the last weapon Dante gets if you found,
which is that's actually no, very timely, because that happens almost after this, because then you do have one more fight with Urizen, which is a big
fight.
A big fight.
If you found back in Cavalier Angelo's stage the hidden Kalina Ann weapon, which I found accidentally.
You get double rocket launchers.
You get double Kalina Ann.
Which I'm like, they really did it. This game is wild.
Which the Urizen fight has its own discussion for story stuff, shall we?
Yeah, so basically, him and Dante have a big moment and a big fight, and then how it ends is where like everything just drops.
So pretty much Dante, after he beats King Cerberus, he jumps into a portal, which leads him to the top of the Qyploth tree, because that tree grows upside down.
Right.
And he's in a very scenic countryside with, lo and behold, with Urizen, and lo and behold, their house in the background, which must mean that Dante and Virgil and Sparta, since they're all demons, and I guess Ava, are incredibly old, because there's no city around that house, or maybe it was just sort of supposed to be that area. But Urizen is standing there, and Dante points out, like, this brings back a lot of memories.
It's a very
sort of quip. And he quips about like how Ava didn't rescue Virgil, and then he gets serious again and points out and tries to talk to Urizen and say, hey, you know what? Mom tried to find you too, and she died trying.
Yep.
And Urizen says, I have no recollection of this tale. This is merely an illusion created by the fruit. And at that point, it's sort of just Dante's fear that, all right, Virgil's almost completely gone, and this demon is here.
Yep, time to kill him.
And Urizen takes a big old bite out of that juicy apple, and he
loses his tubes.
His tubes, his roots come off, and there we see, I guess, the fully empowered demon form of or Virgil's demon side. And this fight gave me a lot of trouble because Urizen was walloping me. I found it really funny that when Urizen isn't doing cool stuff, he is just sort of getting into a basic fighting stance and jostling around.
Yeah, me too. Yeah,
since Dante is so
doing
small,
sweep kicks.
He has to bend over and punch and do sweep kicks. Yeah.
He's hitting you with low kick.
Yeah, but then while this fight is happening, V is on like his last legs. Like Nero's helping him up on his feet.
Yeah, and then basically he's helping him across to Urizen.
Yeah, he's giving the same monologue to Nero that V gave to Trish.
Basically giving him the rundown of like the history of the two.
Yeah, like Dante and Virgil.
And basically
while this monologue is happening, Dante wins. He is
victorious. He knocks him over.
Yeah, he's victorious. He stabs So one thing that I wanted to, now that I mention it, with the RE engine, and just sort of harkening back to the Resident Evil 2 remake and how Birkin's forms look amazing in that with the eyeballs. A lot of eyeballs on the bosses in this game, huh?
Yeah, I think they really are taking advantage of the eyeball
Artemis,
the nobodies.
A lot, a lot of eyeballs.
A lot of eyeballs. But
yeah, so Dante beats Urizen and stabs him in the chest, and Nero shows up, and everybody's here.
The gang's all here until V decides to pull a big shocker, walks up to Urizen, climbs on him, and immediately stabs his cane right into Urizen's chest, and a blue flash of light appears, and who could that be but our main man, Virgil?
Oh my god, it's the mysterious silhouette from the final trailer that came out.
The final trailer that people should not have watched. I don't know why Capcom dropped that shit. Man. But
I was upset.
Yeah, so
part of me knew it was going to happen, but it's like, oh man, this would have been so much more impactful.
It really would have.
And then there he is, the Alpha and the Omega,
the biggest
Virgil.
Boy. That's what they give him, the subtitle. So him and Dante scuff a bit, but then Virgil goes up to space.
He goes up to space, and he says, "Thank you, Nero."
And then,
he picks up his book. He picks up his William Blake book.
And right after that, him and Nero and Dante have an argument because the big theme of the game with Nero is that since the beginning, Dante kept saying that Nero's been dead weight, and that's really been, like laying on Nero heavy. But then
Dante, probably one of my favorite lines in the game, where Dante says, like, I have to stop him, and Nero goes like, oh no, and Nero, like, Dante's dead serious, and Nero's like, haha, no, I'm not letting you have all the fun, asshole, I'm coming too.
Yeah, they have like a legitimate argument, one of the best voice acted scenes in the whole game.
Yeah, like, he goes like, this doesn't concern you, and Nero's like, what, because I'm dead weight, because I'm sick of that shit, and Dante goes, it's not that, and Nero cuts in, then what is it? And Dante shouts and finally confirms, because he's your father. And once again, the RE engine at work. Nero, like,
their faces in this scene,
he's wincing, gritting his teeth, like, coming to terms with that. And Dante is like, at first I had my hunch, and then I saw how the Yamato responded to you.
Dante,
and I knew.
Being the saddened uncle to deliver this news.
Yep, and he tells him, and it's like, it's not because he thinks Nero's dead weight. It's because I can't have you go kill your old man. And he walks away and says he needs an ass kicking, and I'm the one that needs to do it. And Dante walks away, and Nero is still there and just coming to terms.
Yeah, and then from that point forward, the third to last level involves you climbing up to space and fighting all of V's demons, the ones from Malay Island, even coming packed with remixes from Devil May Cry 1.
Oh my god.
Dude, this game is a blessing.
Psycho Siren gets remixed.
Psycho Siren? Oh my god.
But Dante even, so Dante first quips, it's like, damn it, V, was this your plan all along? Because there are parts in the game where like when characters are walking away or they finally have a plan solidified, V like smirks a bit. It's after you beat Malphus and Nero is helping V onto his shoulders. V has like the most, it focuses on it, like the most wicked, just creepy looking grin on his face. But yeah, you fight Griffin, Shadow, and Nightmare, and Dante even quips that it's just like Malay Island. But then he points out, like, they know they can't beat me on their own. Are they trying to atone for something? And that's when we find out that they are the repressed and pained thoughts of Virgil when he was Nilo Angelo. And rather than go back to him, they want Dante to kill him so they can, quote from Griffin, end Virgil's nightmares.
Which is kind of cheesy, but in a good way, in a fun way.
It's kind of cheesy, but it's like really cool because like Virgil's been through a lot.
He really has.
He's been through a whole lot, and I'm sure him not having to remember losing to Mundus and being corrupted and turned into a knight and having to fight his brother and getting walloped,
and then becoming a
frail, considerable amount of like weight off his shoulders,
and then also being as when he was V, being as frail as he was, basically kind of almost like a definitely
what's the word I'm looking for? Humility moment where
Oh, definitely, yeah.
like he
It's
realizes
like even V is like the whole reason he's doing this originally, or what we're led to believe, is that he's just ashamed of his actions and he's ashamed of
he's
what
like, I
Urizen's doing.
fucked up and I need to
Yeah.
reverse this soon.
And like even later, Virgil like sort of has shades that like he's kind of ashamed of what his demon self did.
Like his
Not
character
out of,
development still
possibly
remains.
like maybe not out of guilt, because with Virgil's whole disposition, we're sort of led to believe it's like more out of shame, or like, oh man, I was such a fucking nerd.
Yeah, exactly.
But so Dante has that fight, and then we get a Nero scene where Trish, Lady, and Nico are running away from the Clypoth tree because it is now collapsing, and Nero is running after them, and they get in the car, and Nero is not having a time. He is having the worst time.
Yeah, in the car.
He just got some very bad news.
This is actually where one of my favorite, like, it's a very understated scene.
The lady line, right?
Lady gives the line where she specifically goes, like, it's like, you don't want to go down the path of, killing your father,
so
because you will regret that decision for the rest of your life, or something like that.
And like Nero jumps in the car, immediately gets mad at Trish and asks her what the hell is going on. And then because he just found out, not only is the man that cut off his arm his father, Dante has known who he is and who his father is the entire time, which must mean that Trish knew. And then Trish confirms, I didn't know for certain, but his logic is very sound, and I had a hunch. And she says, I know you're mad at Virgil, but you can't go kill your father. And that's when Lady says she's right, and because that's her whole thing.
Yeah, because even in Devil May Cry 3, she regretted what she had to do, and that defines her character. And this is kind of like that arc coming full circle in a way. Like, passing that knowledge, her sins, like, you don't want to repeat the mistakes that I made. And I think that was
like, she already couldn't live a normal life because of what Arkham did, and then she finally kills Arkham, and like, sort of harkening back to the Dante line from Devil May Cry 1, devils never cry. If you if you have emotions and you experience remorse, you are human. That's the first scene Lady cries in Devil May Cry 3.
Yep.
And she cries and laughs just from like, I think in Devil May Cry 3 it's both out of like satisfaction of finally got my revenge, and just the weight. It's like, I had to kill my dad to do it too.
Mm-hmm.
But Nero is big mad. He is very big Dino Devil May Cry mad.
Very upset.
And he jumps out of a moving van and apparently flies away. We don't. He flies away.
He goes up. He only knows, like, I must go up.
And then, so while he's doing that, we have probably the fight that gave me the hardest time in the game, but also
got me the hardest.
Yep, the Dante Virgil fight that we've been waiting years for.
Like, not that we haven't already had it, but like a rematch, so to speak.
The rematch.
I want to just say my favorite thing about the whole fight is that, like, sometimes you won't always get like certain lines throughout the fight, but sometimes you'll get specifically the line where Dante goes like, "You stole your son's arm, and this is all you're capable of." Like, he's just talking shit.
And then Virgil screams like, "My son means nothing to me." And he does the same thing in Devil May Cry 3, where if you taunt Virgil, he will taunt you back and quip and go like, "Get serious," or like, "After all this time." And then so you're fighting Virgil and he's doing Virgil thing, and then you get him to about, I think it depends on difficulty. I was doing it on Devil Hunter difficulty. I'm on Sons of Sparta now.
Sometimes he does a new move like Raining Swords.
Yeah, and you get Virgil down to 50%. And Dante says, "Isn't it about time that we wrap things up?" Or no, Dante says, like, "I think it's about time we finish things." And Virgil says, "Right you are." And then he pops his Sin Devil trigger, because he has one now.
Of course he does. Whatever.
And then the fight gets wacky, and so you live through that. And you're fighting Virgil, it's going, and then he pops Sin Devil trigger again, and now not only can he use summon swords, but one of the many mechanics they lifted from DMC Devil May Cry.
In an attempt to just give payback in the Japanese game developer way of doing what the other game did, but better.
Yeah, because in DMC Devil May Cry, one of the key points in the Virgil fight is an ability he didn't have in the original was he can make copies of himself. Sin Devil Trigger Virgil is also able to make copies of himself.
Yes.
And now you're fighting 2 Virgils as one Dante.
And again, it's done so much better here, and it actually makes sense, and it's cool. Like, we can just assume, okay, so that's a new move he got from his Sin Devil Trigger, because, you know, Dante has all these new moves from Sin Devil Trigger. He couldn't gravity squeeze normally. So, like, that gives better context to him being able to do that than DMC did with, oh, everyone doesn't love me, and I'm just gonna go on a vision quest where I kill people because they made fun of me, and I'm gonna go kill myself.
And then my mommy tells me to go towards the light, but I'm not gonna, because Dante beat me up and betrayed me.
And everyone thinks I'm an idiot, and that's why I'm evil now.
Everyone made fun of my trilby.
That's why they got rid of it in the HD version.
In the definitive edition. But yeah, so that fight concludes. Virgil, and then Virgil whacks you, and then after the fight, Virgil comes to the realization of Nero is my son, and then Dante goes like, "Yeah, you dumbass! You finally remember through that thick skull of yours."
You dink,
and
you
then
goon.
And then I love Virgil sort of snarkily replies like, "That was a long time ago," almost like he's reminiscing on the time that he made a sex. And then Dante,
that implies he only made a sex once.
Yeah, and then Dante, who does not know what sex is, he thinks it's a word for pizza, but Dante quips back, I guess even you were young once. And then he says it's about time to finish this. And Dante gets into a cool sword pose, and Virgil gets into a very
virginity defending pose.
Yeah, he's defending his virginity like his life depends on it. A pose that a 40-year-old man should not be making.
He's making the Seinfeld bat holding pose.
Bobby, this man is wearing leather pants.
He really is.
He is spread eagling.
Yo, he is spreading. This man is spreading. But then the most G moment happens where they fly at each other, and then who shows up?
A bolt of lightning comes down, and a mysterious demon shows up. Who is it? And then we cut back to Nero previously, and we go through Nero's stage.
Who's running like a big idiot up the tree. It's not even a stage. You just see him running up the tree like a big idiot.
He's running.
And then he's like trying to reach, but then his Devil Breaker breaks, but then he grows a new arm.
No, wait a minute. Hold on. We can't get to that yet. We completely skipped over Kyrie.
No, shut up. She doesn't... Okay,
he finds a phone.
Listen, Kyrie...
He finds a phone in space, and he calls Kyrie. Because this is a good scene for Nero. Because he says, like, for my entire life, the only people I had were you and Creed. That was all I knew. And suddenly I have a family, and I don't know what to do. And in Kyrie's 3rd or 4th voiced line in the game, says, Nero, you've always known what to do. I'm sure whatever choice you make, you'll be happy with it. And then Nero says, I guess I needed to hear that. And then he hangs up, and he has a really good monologue about how, like, he, ever since Credo died, trying to save him from Sanctus, and Nero has been just... So, mirroring Virgil, where Virgil seeks power not to be a villain, but to protect what's dear to him, because Ava died, because she went looking for him, and he couldn't protect her. Nero wants more power because he couldn't protect Kyrie those 2 times, and Credo died for his sake. And
so he's got a lot of guilt, but he just channels it in a more healthy way and not being evil. He channels it in a more healthy
way, and he says, in like another very good line, a lot of emotion behind it. I'm not. He says, just like in Devil May Cry 4, I swear it, because Nero swears a lot. But he says, I'm not going to let you die, and it's not specified if he means Dante or if he means Virgil, but it's definitely both of them. And yep, that's when his Devil Breaker breaks away, and he grows a brand
new arm.
Grows a brand new arm, brand new wings, and then he does a very big jump.
And by the way, him growing the wings brings so much context to that title screen. The V that comes out of his back, those are his wings. That was a low-key spoiler.
Do you
Yo.
mean like in the final trailer where it
Yeah.
shows his wings coming out?
Shut
but
up!
the
No
wings
one
are
should watch
blocked
that trailer.
by the Devil May Cry
I'm
5 logo
upset that
body?
they dropped that trailer. That trailer ruins everything. I'm imagining it not existing. So the trailer on the title screen. I mean, the wings on the title screen,
Yeah, they're lined up with Nero's back, and
indicating
once again we've come full circle.
Pull My Devil Trigger has context now because you
Oh my
finally
God, 'cause he
can.
finally has his devil trigger,
And-
and the bolt of lightning comes down. Lo and behold, it is Nero's full devil trigger.
And it
Whereas
looks
previously, the Devil Bringer was a portion of his DT, where it's like he's a human mostly, but his arm is permanently devil triggered. Now he can activate it at will,
yeah.
and he pushes Dante and Nero, or Dante and Virgil away, and says some words at him.
Yeah. And it's a very cool fight. If anything, like the last fight was a real test of skill. Everything that you've learned up to that point with Dante really put to the test. But this fight is like a victory lap by comparison because
Definitely, like Dante versus Virgil is like, all right, I hope you here it is. Like,
I don't know how it is
19
on
years of-
other like difficulties, but like at least on Devil Hunter, that was such an easy fight. But I'm happy it
Yeah,
was
so
because it's supposed to be a
I feel like-
liberating moment.
I feel like Dante Virgil is the real final boss of the game because it's like, here we go, 19 years of Devil May Cry, end of the Sons of Sparta timeline, wrap it up, and then you get to fight Virgil as Nero, and Nero has
Enter the next
he
generation. Get
he
decked.
has a devil trigger that is recharging for the entire fight. He has Buster. He has the Devil Bringer back.
He
has
gives
Smash
Virgil
again.
the middle finger when he transforms and goes F
says-
you.
He says "fuck you" and does a middle finger, and that is his devil trigger pose. He
It's
is
so
flipping.
cool.
He is screaming. He gets Showdown. My favorite Nero move is back.
Yes, pretty much every good Nero Devil Trigger move from 4 returns. Even the blue charge shot, which now layers over the new
Yes!
charge shot. So awesome.
I was losing it for this
You
fight.
can
I was
even
having
use
so much
the
fun.
Devil Bringer to grapple. You don't have to use your mechanical grapple if you don't want to. You could use
Yeah.
the Devil Bringer to grapple.
And
It's kind of weird, but you can do it.
And true to form, you have different grapples if you're in Devil Trigger or not.
Yeah, and it's oh man, like it.
Oh my god. We have to talk about Silver Bullet, especially because of at the time of this recording, that tweet I showed you earlier. So Silver Bullet is the name of the song that plays when during the Nero verse, and
Yeah.
it is a remix of both Devil Trigger. It has bits of Virgil's theme in it, and also the song "Your Legacy," which is like the motif of Devil May Cry 5. Is a combination like dance dubstep track of all those songs, and apparently it was composed in 2017, an entire year before the game was revealed, because Capcom was really banking on like just Devil Trigger being the song, the theme of the game, and I think that's such a cool thing. They pretty much bet their money on, and it paid off.
It really did, and what a bombastic final fight that leads into a very strange ending, but I think a very like very conclusive end.
I feel like it was a good way to like end the Sons of Sparta storyline without like
Yeah, because essentially what
killing off
Yeah.
Dante and Virgil.
Because what ends up happening is instead the two of them decide to stop the Clyphod tree from completely just growing out of control. So what the two decide to do is go back to hell and stop it from there. But then the catch of that being they're going to be
They have to stay there.
they have to stay there.
And the reason that they can do that, as Dante says, is because Nero is up here. And so he's essentially entrusting the
Yeah.
safety of the human realm to just passing the torch to Nero.
And that is such an important moment for this character, because again, the whole game, Dante, the words "you are dead weight" laying heavy on Nero's shoulder. Now he's getting the validation from Big Uncle and Big Dad that he's always wanted, and it's such a good scene.
Yeah, and like also what he did is Dante and Virgil are no longer like, they're still rivals and brothers, but they no longer have the intent to kill each other over their differences.
Nope.
They have toned down considerably, and now they're just fighting for the hell of it, just because they're trapped in, as Virgil says, they have quite some time.
They do. And of course, the game ends with the classic, I almost say like a comical take on the Devils Never Cry type scene between Nero and Nico. And
oh my god, yeah, I love that scene.
Some really good banter.
Cry? Gonna cry? I won't say it, because it's alright if you want to cry. And then they have that whole banter. The phone rings. Nero answers it. Devil May Cry turns away. Fuck. And then Kyrie is asking them when they're going to get home so they can eat, I don't know, pasta.
Yeah,
and they stop in the road. And Nero steps out to fight these demons with his new arm. And Nico tosses him a prototype Devil Bringer. And Nero says, don't need it, got an arm. And it is a wearable gauntlet. So he can now now in this credit sequence, in true Devil May Cry fashion,
you just fight a bunch of monsters, and you can
kill enough enemies to get the secret ending, but now you can use the Devil Breaker, you can use your Devil Bringer, you can Devil Trigger, you can use all of your moves.
Everything is there.
Everybody's here.
The full kit is here. And I think it's genius that they gave you Devil Trigger at the end of the game, because now it incentivizes you to go back and play Sons of Sparta and see all this new stuff you can try out.
Oh, definitely.
But I guess kind of returning to the plot though, then it cuts to Dante and Virgil in hell, doing basically the same thing, fighting a bunch of demons, bantering off.
Just fighting a bunch of demons, bantering on and on.
Having the best, iteration of the jackpot scene in the series.
Yeah.
Where, Virgil's like, don't say it!
So in the secret ending, they're fighting, and Dante wins, and he says, alright, I'm up 1, and Virgil is considerably calmed down. It's just a brotherly rivalry now. He goes, where the hell did you learn to count? We're even. And a bunch of enemies show up. They go back to back. And Virgil says, don't you dare say it. And then Dante cuts him off and says, jackpot. And shoots at the screen to end the game.
And yeah,
Oh, and also, we forgot to... I guess Trish and Lady are now managing
the physical location of Devil May Cry,
of Dante's Devil May Cry, because they're two separate businesses.
Or is it Morrison?
So what it is, there's still Trish and Lady, who are apparently taking over Dante's version of Devil May Cry.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of notes you can find in the game, like Morrison's letters, which actually go into depth about Dante and Virgil's backstory.
Right.
Why it goes over why Virgil's obsessed with poetry, because it's as a kid, they would fight over things. So Virgil went to the library every day and loved poetry. And he took out a book and wrote his name on it of William Blake poetry. And he said, because if I don't write my name on it, it's not truly mine. So that sort of goes into his obsession with just power and defining himself. But one of Morrison's letters, it's one of the final ones, where he's talking to Nero. And he says, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship between you and I. And it's that's a perfect segue into future Devil May Cries, because now Nero he's just Devil May Cry now. So maybe he'll get contracted by Morrison, and Trish and Lady will come on jobs to help him. And he has Nico backing him up. And he has Kyrie at home taking care of the orphans, to cook pasta.
It's a cook pasta.
To maybe show up in person next time.
I want to shout out...
maybe Nico will build her a mech suit, I hope.
You bringing up... And that's funny you said mech suit, because I do want to just briefly bring up the DLC Devil Breakers, specifically the Gerbera GP01.
Oh, yeah,
Shout-outs to Gundam.
Shoji... Oh, I forget his last name. He was the designer on... What's it?
0083 Stardust Memory.
83, yeah.
That's hype. But yeah, so I think that brings us to the end currently of the spoiler portion of the podcast. Wow, a fresh 2.5 hours in. Whoa! and by the way, I didn't mention it through.
Thought there'd be so much to talk about in Devil May Cry.
I know,
a game
right?
That's only 10 hours.
A game that's really like 8 to 10 hours long, really short, but like very sweet and highly replayable. But
Has done less for the series than DMC Devil May Cry, if I might say.
Oh, yeah. But no, I didn't want to mention
that's
it.
That's always going to be a running gag.
Yeah. I didn't want to mention it, but my footage even had to loop around because we spent so much time talking about this game. I didn't even record enough footage.
Whatever. All footage is good footage.
All footage is good footage. And hey, a lot of people are probably going to be listening to this anyway, being a podcast. The footage is just there for, if you want to watch me play video game. But hey, speaking of video game, I think that's a good time for us to start closing things out and giving our final thoughts on the game. I think I guess I'll start first. I personally thought this game, it's honestly, I don't know how Capcom did it. They dropped 2 Game of the Year contenders in 1 year. It's really hard for me to say which game I like more, but I think if I was to like make a hard guess, I think I've actually played more Devil May Cry 5 than Resident Evil 2, and I think that is just a testament to how good this game, how much I love this game. So currently, like, sitting at a high bar for me for like new games in 2019. Just an incredibly polished return to form, character actions back. Nero and Dante and the boys are back. They treated it with such a reverence, and like it is like the opposite of DMC Devil May Cry. So much respect, and like I really hope this new momentum Capcom has built for themselves really just continues on. Just like it's really hard for me to put to words because we just spoke about it for so long. But yeah, it really just Devil May Cry 5. It's incredible. It's such a good game. Go buy it.
Go buy it. Sort of following up on what you said, yeah, like Capcom, they found something. They're in a renaissance. Like Monster Hunter World, Resident Evil 2, Devil May Cry 5, they are just killing it as far as like just games go. Like I also feel that they could both contend for. I know we're still like technically fairly early into 2019, but these are definitely like Devil May Cry 5 definitely being like one of the best games I've played that came out this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I also feel the same way. Like I'm so glad to see what like Itsuno and the team at Capcom are capable of when they're not plagued with like development issues. Like not knocking on Devil May Cry, on DMC Devil May Cry. I feel like the mechanics that they brought over from that game that Itsuno liked, like the zoom in at the end of a fight, the training mode, like just little quality of life stuff like that. It's really cool just seeing like elements from every single game brought together, just sort of like celebrating its history and what it can do. And it just has me like really hopeful that there are future installments in this series after Itsuno directs Dragon's Dogma 2, which I hope he does. I think I might be the only person.
But, our buddy Suna definitely, Marlon definitely wants that. But right now we're getting the Dragon's Dogma animated series on Netflix. Everyone was clamoring for.
Oh, finally, Dragon's Dogma 2. It's here.
But yeah, so I think that pretty much covers Devil May Cry 5. This was a good meaty podcast, if I do say so myself. You definitely killed it with
2.5 hours.
Yeah, you killed it with the lore stuff. I was just letting you go off, like. But yeah, so
someone has to be the devil's advocate for the novels and the anime.
Yeah, exactly. And you were such the guy.
Itsuno he's acknowledging me. He's going. You seem to enjoy it. It's canon now. And I'm on my knees, just going, thank you, thank you for validating me.
What could be more humbling? But, so I guess, yeah, like ending stuff. Where can they find you, Danny, on the social media?
I am on Twitter at, let me see, because I change my a lot for some reason.
I still gotta figure out how to do that.
I am Wohey Danny. That's WoaheyDNNY. I tweet about vid games and fight games. I'm also going to be, because I have like a decent PC now, I'm going to start trying to get into just like possibly streaming games or at least recording stuff to bolster my YouTube. So I'm going to start trying to do that. Where can they find you, Bobby?
They can find me at Bobby Toasters on Twitter, and of course, Critical Break on YouTube, the very same that is hosting this podcast right here. And I just shit, me. I just shit post about games and things I'm playing. Maybe you'll get some sneak peeks at future episodes of the podcast. I'm currently in the midst of taking notes for the video game Shin Megami Tensei Soul Hackers, which might possibly be the next episode that I actually also already have a guest lined up for. So hopefully we can make that work out next month, because that seems to be my trajectory right now, is releasing this monthly. Not that, again, it doesn't really require a ton of editing, but a lot of research, particularly with Soul Hackers. This was the first game that I'm really sitting down and taking notes for. So like, I'm probably not
want to burn yourself out. So like once a month is like definitely a good, especially when you're getting started.
Right. So I hope to deliver y'all with meaty podcasts once a month. If not, maybe you'll get the odd twice if I'm feeling up to it. But yeah, so thank you so much for coming on and chatting about Devil May Cry with me, Danny.
Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. I'm glad that I love running my mouth.
Yeah. Listen, it's like, I love that. That is like the best thing. I love having guests who are just as like enthused, if not more enthused than me about a topic, and can bring in more insight than I could. Because, like, that's also a goal of mine with this podcast, is trying things or thinking about things differently. Like, one thing I'll also say as like a minor spoiler, can't guarantee that this will be something that's happening soon, but my buddy Dan, you know Dan, right?
Yeah.
Other Dan, I was thinking of having my buddy from high school. He just loves the Atelier games, and because the Atelier, 3 of the Atelier, like, the Arlen trilogy, right? They're all on the Switch, and then the 4th game's coming out soon. So I figured, you know what, like, maybe now's the time. Because, like, the games admittedly put me off because of how, cutesy they were. I thought they'd just be some moe blob crap. But, like, ever since I've played Trails in the Sky, I think I've been really, like, valuing wholesome RPG content. And apparently that series is full of that, and funny comedy.
I've only played a few of the series, but there are really good running gags in it. Mm-hmm. But as far as mechanics, it's a lot of like because you play as like alchemists in the game, so like so sort of crafting items and attacks and weapons is a big thing. So if you're into that, the combat pays off too.
Right, but not to drag this on any further though. I will catch you guys next time. Like I said, I will try to see if I can get the next podcast similar time of next month. And, provided I can, like, get through my notes and get a good time to record with the next guest. So, Danny, thank you for being on once again. And
thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. And I will see you all next time. Take care.
Later.